Chapter 81, S.H.I.E.L.D., Captain America is here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Outside, the S.H.I.E.L.D. task force surrounded the entire villa. They all held guns and cautiously approached the villa, and the encirclement continued to shrink. The sound of heavy footsteps and the friction of firearms intertwined together, like a note of death, about to launch the final offensive against the locked prey. Damn, these guys are really haunting. Logan stood by the window, carefully checking what was going on outside. He didn't expect that even though he had already left the United States, he still couldn't escape the pursuit of these guys, let alone that they would come so quickly. Can't they take care of their own family's affairs first? Logan was a little annoyed. A bunch of Hydra's secret lines are wandering in S.H.I.E.L.D., and many of them have even climbed to the top of S.H.I.E.L.D. and are in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s important intelligence. S.H.I.L.D. even has the nickname Snake Shield, which shows how seriously S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated. Logan really couldn't figure it out. They ignored Hydra's infiltration, but they still had time to catch mutants all over the world. Cough cough cough. Behind him, James, who had been thrown away by Logan earlier, was kneeling on the ground. His face was red from the long-term lack of oxygen. He was supporting the ground with one hand and covering his chest with one hand, and he couldn't stop coughing violently. He gasped for breath, looked up at Logan, and said with a proud look on his face, "You can't escape. No one has been able to escape from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s encirclement. I advise you to surrender quickly to avoid unnecessary consequences. Casualties." While speaking, he glanced at Clarice outside the door, and the implication was obvious. Logan and Victor had self-healing factors and were not afraid of bullets, but the little girl was not. If there was a fight, the girl might be shot to death randomly. Go to hell. Suddenly, Victor, who was in a daze on the sofa, burst into anger. Like a tiger, he suddenly flew up from the sofa. His painful face was full of ferocity, and the nails in his hand stretched out instantly. He pressed on James without hesitation, and his sharp claws instantly pierced James's chest. In a state of rage, Victor seemed to no longer have any sense. He violently opened James's chest with his palm and allowed the hot blood to pour on him. He stretched out his sharp claws and grabbed hard. James's beating heart was instantly crushed by brute force, and pieces of flesh and blood flew out from his chest, splashing all over Victor's face. His ferocious expression became even more intense. Adding minced meat and blood made him look extremely terrifying. All this happened so fast that even when his heart was crushed, James had not yet reacted. He looked at Victor on top of him with a look of horror and astonishment. It wasn't until the other party pulled his hand out of his chest, still holding a completely exploded heart in his palm, and the incomplete heart muscle tissue was still twitching instinctively, that James finally realized that pain and fear surged up at the same time. He wanted to struggle to say something, but except for a desperate whine, no sound came out of his throat. He rolled his eyes and was completely breathless. Logan had seen too many bloody scenes, so he naturally had no feelings about the scene. He just looked at the corpse and couldn't help but shake his head. If you pretend to be dead, maybe we won't bother to care about you. Why do you insist on trying? Clarice at the door obviously couldn't accept this situation. Her little face turned pale with fright and she subconsciously took a step back. Logan was a little helpless, but he also knew that now was not the time for psychological counseling, so he could only continue to turn his head and look out the window. The siege outside has been completely completed, and a team of S.H.I.E.L.D. task forces are guarding any entrance and exit. If they have the slightest idea of breaking out, they will be shot to death in an instant. Logan looked at the encirclement and couldn't help but frown for a moment. Fortunately for him, his self-healing factor has almost recovered, making it difficult for ordinary bullets to harm him. As for Victor, he was okay. Although he was old and his self-healing factor had declined, he was still able to escape despite the hail of bullets. The only thing that is difficult to deal with is Clarice. Any bullet can easily kill this little girl, and Logan and the others cannot just sit idly by and ignore her. At this time, Trump stood at the forefront of the encirclement, took out a loudspeaker and shouted loudly, "Logan Howlett, I know you are inside. Stop hiding, come out and surrender quickly. I will give you after a minute of thinking. If I still don't get the answer I want, we will attack physically. I guess you don't want this manor, your only remaining memory, to be completely destroyed by bullets." His voice was clearly heard throughout the villa through the loudspeaker. Logan snorted, hid behind the curtain, and quietly stretched out his pistol. Bang bang bang. 3 shots were fired, and the precise marksmanship instantly hit the heads of several members of the task force in front. The whistling bullets almost cut off half of the heads of these members, and the hot blood flew up like blood pillars. Damn it, that the sound of gunshots startled Rumlow, and he quickly retreated behind the team members who were holding explosion shields. At the same time, he said fiercely, "The window on the left, quick, shoot." In an instant, all the task forces pointed their guns at Logan's location and pulled the trigger decisively. In an instant, gunfire rang out fiercely, and the muzzles of more than a dozen rifles sprayed tongues of flame at the same time. Bullets rained down towards the villa like raindrops, and the smell of gunpowder smoke filled the entire manor. "Get down quickly." Logan nimbly shuttled around the villa, constantly dodging bullets and at the same time finding opportunities from time to time, raising his pistol and pulling the trigger, and then opened the head of a task force member, but this group of task forces seemed to have been brainwashed. They were not afraid at all because of the fall of their companions. Instead, they fired at the villa with increasing anger. Bang bang bang. The dense bullets were like a penetrating downpour. Under the erosion of the bullets, the walls of the villa soon became riddled with holes, and dust and debris continued to fly everywhere. Logan moved around in the dust and mist, unceremoniously firing back precise bullets. Every time a shot was fired, a member of the advance team must fall down. At the same time, Langlam looked at his men who fell one after another. His expression gradually became cold, and he yelled loudly, "Find a bunker, hide." When his voice fell, these members of the advance team acted quickly like machines under instructions, either hiding behind the car or hiding beside the livestock pen. But their fingers were still on the trigger, ready to fire at any time. The cathartic gunfire finally stopped at this moment, and the noisy farm instantly returned to calm. "Stop." Logan, who was hiding in the corner to change bullets, heard the gunfire stop and could finally take a few breaths, but he also understands that these guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. will never give up. As time goes by, their situation will only become more critical. If more support from S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives, all kinds of heavy weapons will also appear. By then, even anti-tank rockets may appear. It only takes one shot to destroy the entire villa. Moreover, there are many people out there, and maybe everyone is wearing a camera similar to a law enforcement recorder. It is impossible for him to use heat vision in this situation, otherwise the fact that he has awakened a new skill will definitely be exposed. As for annihilation, it is even more impossible to use it. The side effects of that ability are too great. Once used, he will have to wait for at least a day to recover. By then, even escaping will be a problem. He must now conserve his energy to deal with other support from S.H.I.E.L.D. Logan couldn't help but look inside the house. At this time, Victor's drug power was still continuing, and he was lying on the ground with his head in his arms with a ferocious expression. It was difficult to run, let alone fight. As for Clarice, she lay down after Logan yelled and was not hurt at all, except for a slight scratch on her arm caused by the sawdust that was blown away by the bullet. After hearing the gunfire stop, the girl slowly raised her head and shook off the dust on her head. After making sure it was safe for now, she cautiously crawled towards Logan. "Don't come here, find a better place." Logan, who was huddled in the corner, waved to the girl anxiously. He knew that those S.H.I.E.L.D. guys would launch a more ferocious second round of shooting at any time, and it would only be extremely dangerous for Clarice to get close to here. However, Clarice continued to take a few steps forward, then raised her head and said to Logan, "I can try to send us to the barn." While speaking, she pointed in the direction where Logan had hidden the pickup truck. Logan was stunned and asked with a frown, "Is it really okay?" He knew that the girl's ability should have been awakened not long ago, and her control over the ability was still very lacking. This kind of precise positioning of the teleportation distance was obviously not an easy task for her, and once they teleport to the wrong place, they will only be greeted by a salvo of bullets. "I can try." Clarice obviously can't guarantee that either. Hearing this, Logan couldn't help but frown, but after glancing at the dense surroundings outside, he could only nod his head and said, "Give it a try." Now, they obviously have no other choice but to believe in Clarice. Clarice nodded, stood up and hid behind a wardrobe, then took a deep breath. her eyes gradually became serious, and a purple light kept blooming in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and spread her hands hard in front of her, as if she wanted to tear open the space in front of her. Buzz. A slight ripple suddenly came from the space in front of her. The originally normal space gradually rippled under her pull. The next moment, a crack slowly appeared. As the girl applied force with her hands, the cracks became wider and wider, eventually forming a light blue space door. The other side of the door was facing their large pickup truck. After doing all this, Clarice was obviously completely exhausted. With a ferocious look on her face, she could only grit her teeth and support the operation of the space door. She waved to Logan and motioned for them to hurry in. Walk. Seeing this, Logan quickly put away his pistol, picked up Victor on the ground and put it on his shoulders. He held Clarice with one hand and got into the space door. In just one step, the three of them crossed from the villa to the barn. The space door behind her also disappeared, and Clarice gasped for breath with a pale face. Get in the car. Logan pushed her to the back door, opened the passenger door at the same time, threw Victor in, and quickly ran to the driver's seat to start the car. At the same time, Rumlow was staring at the window outside the villa, secretly urging support to arrive quickly. Report. Suddenly, a subordinate ran behind him and reported loudly, signs of space fluctuations were detected. In order to deal with mutants, their task force has put a lot of effort into equipment. They have various detection instruments, such as infrared scanners to detect stealth units, or space detectors to detect space, and even identify transformation mutants. Identifier friend or foe is available. Just now, the member carrying the space probe felt obvious traces of space fluctuations. Luo Lang was stunned and reacted instantly. Damn it, they still have space mutants. Watch your surroundings, don't let them escape. Luo Rum shouted orders, and at the same time kept scanning the surroundings, trying to find traces of Logan and the others. Bang. At this time, a violent explosion suddenly came from the barn in the distance. The wooden barn door was instantly knocked away. After rolling several times in the air, it was stuck heavily in the farmland. A large pickup truck flew out of the barn, its roaring engine sounding like the roar of a tiger, crushing the rice fields and speeding through the wilderness. Damn it, get in the car and give chase. Langlam shouted an order, and at the same time he quickly got into the passenger seat of a car. Upon hearing this, all members of the task force also put away their firearms and strode towards the car. Dozens of SUVs started up at the same time, turning around and speeding in the direction of Logan and the others. More than a dozen black SUVs were like hyenas locking onto their prey, charging at the prey in groups. Logan kept looking at the rearview mirror. His expression became more solemn, and he cursed, damn it, how long are these damn guys going to chase me? S.H.I.L.D.S vehicles are all specially modified, and their engines are also state-of-the-art products. Although their large pickup truck for transporting goods is powerful, it is definitely not their opponent in terms of speed. Seeing the distance between the two parties getting closer and closer, Logan became increasingly irritable. Cough cough cough. At this time, Victor, the co-pilot, suddenly coughed violently. As time went by, the effect of the medicine in his body gradually dissipated, and the remaining medicine was unable to suppress the repair of the self-healing factors. All the self-healing factors began to fight back against the medicine. At the same time, Victor's state was repaired, and his brain gradually became clear. How are you? Logan controlled the car and turned his head to ask Victor concernedly. Much better. Victor patted his head, which was still a little dazed, and said coldly, that damn bastard, the medicine he administered was quite strong. Seeing this, Logan no longer worried about his body and threw out a gun. If you still have the strength to shoot, then quickly stop the speed of those bastards. Victor picked up the pistol, loaded it skillfully, and hummed, before I kill them all, I have endless energy in my body. After saying that, he grabbed the handle with one hand, leaned half of his body out of the car, raised the gun and pulled the trigger at the pursuer behind him. Bang bang. 2 shots were fired, but due to the excessive speed of the car and Victor's unconscious mind, both shots failed. Hey, shoot accurately, we don't have many bullets. Logan looked in the rearview mirror and couldn't help but complain. What's the rush? I'm just testing the gun. Victor muttered, then aimed carefully and fired, bang bang bang. As his shooting skills improved, his marksmanship gradually recovered, and he frequently hit the windows of the cars behind him. However, because the windows were bulletproof glass, the bullets could not penetrate directly and only left a row of cracks on the windows, but Victor's marksmanship was not simple. The bullets were fired continuously, all hitting the center of the crack, bang. Several bullets all landed at one point and successfully penetrated the bulletproof glass. The driver of the car was instantly blown open by the bullet. At extreme speeds, the vehicle suddenly lost control, overturned instantly, and rolled violently on the road. Boom! The fuel tank was damaged, and the sparks from the rolling vehicle ignited the fuel tank, causing a violent explosion in an instant, and the flames shot into the sky. Seeing this, other vehicles behind could only take shelter to avoid being affected by the explosion. Well done. Logan looked at the scene in the rearview mirror and finally breathed a sigh of relief. He took this opportunity to increase the accelerator and escape quickly, bang. Suddenly, an SUV rushed out of the bushes on the side and hit the pickup truck hard. The huge force directly overturned the pickup truck. Logan felt like the world was spinning for a while before he landed heavily. Glass shards were scattered all over his body. The vehicle overturned and the basket was severely deformed. Damn it! Logan struggled and patted his head, climbed out of the broken window, and then hurriedly checked Clarice's injury in the back seat. Fortunately, the girl was not injured, but some skin was scratched by the glass and some blood seeped out. Victor on the other side also cursed and climbed out of the car. Damn you bastard, he will attack you secretly. He stood up and shook his body, shaking off the broken glass all over his body, and stared fiercely in front of him. A group of people immediately ran down from the motorcade and surrounded Logan and the others. Wolverine, it's really difficult to meet you. It's even harder than going to heaven. I've already traveled all the way from Santa Fe to Canada. Roram walked in the middle of the team, staring at Logan with a sinister expression. Humph, you guys' noses are still as sharp as ever. Logan spat in disgust and protected Clarice behind him. The steel claws slowly poked out from between his fingers, reflecting the cold light in the sun. Why, you're not planning to surrender yet? Do you think you can still escape? Rumlow also raised the rifle in his hand and pointed it at Logan's head. I tell you, no one can escape from S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if you run to the horizon, we can still bring you back. As long as you go back with us, I promise you will be fine. But if you resist, do you think the child you are protecting is not afraid of bullets like you? After a pause, Rumlow sneered again. By the way, I remember that you still have Professor X and the albino patient with you, right? Logan looked grim, clenched his fists, and stared at Rumlow. It doesn't matter if you don't say it, we will find him. If you continue to resist, I can't guarantee that my angry men will take any extreme revenge after finding him, but if you surrender, I will keep them safe. At least let them meet you in prison with all their limbs intact. Rumlow narrowed his eyes, his voice full of teasing. Logan's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his breathing became increasingly rapid. He didn't expect these people to be so shameless that they would even use the professor as a bargaining chip to threaten him. Rage continued to wash over Logan's mind, red light bloomed in his eyes, and hot eyes were about to burst out. Rumlow, that's enough. Suddenly, a figure slowly walked out of the woods. Everyone was stunned and turned their heads to look. I saw a tall figure slowly walking over. The red and blue tights showed the sturdiness of the figure, and the round shield in his hand reflected the dazzling brilliance in the sun. Captain, Rumlow frowned, looking at Steve who was walking slowly in astonishment. Chapter 82 The God of Killing Logan, There is only one bloody way to go. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Captain, why are you here? Rumlow looked at Steve Rogers in astonishment. His appearance made all the members of the task force stunned for a moment, as this link was not in the plan. Why is he here? Logan looked at Steve's figure and couldn't help but murmured, but from what he and Rumlow had just said, he should at least have no hostility towards him, or these people from S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't know he was coming at all. This made Logan feel a little relieved. After all, Steve is indeed a strong enemy. If he also makes a move, Logan may have to use annihilation. After all, The current heat vision should not be able to penetrate his vibranium shield, and once annihilation is used, even Steve will probably be melted, but for such an old friend from World War II, Logan didn't want to hurt his life unless it was absolutely necessary. Jimmy, you have a lot of friends. This guy looks like he is here to help us. Victor leaned close to Logan's ear and whispered teasingly. He could see that Steve had no hostility. At this time, Steve also walked to Langlam. Langlam, let me talk to them in person. He was facing Langlam, and his head turned to look at Logan, secretly surprised in his heart. Logan now looked much younger than the last time he saw him. Sorry, Captain. Langlam decisively rejected Steve's request, stared at Logan and the others, and said in a deep voice, my mission is to take them all back. I don't have time for you to chat and reminisce. After that, he waved to his men. Several of them immediately put down their rifles, took out a box-shaped firearm from their waists, and aimed at Logan and the others. Langlam knew that Wolverine and Victor both had self-healing factors, and ordinary bullets could not hurt them at all. For this reason, before setting off, he asked his men to prepare electric shock guns and asked everyone to adjust the power of the electric shock to the maximum. Such an electric shock can directly stun a majestic bull. While Logan and the others can block bullets, Langlam does not believe that they can also block electric shocks. As long as they can be controlled and put on suppression collars, they will only become two ordinary old men. Stop! Steve shouted, and threw the shield in his hand violently. The high-speed rotating shield contained extremely powerful force, and hit the members of the task force heavily. Bang, bang, bang. The shield bounced off all the members at a very tricky angle, and every collision could knock these members of the task force away, and they covered their wounds and wailed heavily. Although it was not fatal, they could no longer have any resistance. After knocking the last member of the task force away, the shield returned to Steve's hand and was put back on his arm. All this happened too quickly. When Langlam reacted, all the members of his team were lying on the ground wailing. Rogers, what are you going to do? I tell you, you are openly confronting S.H.I.E.L.D. Rumlow didn't expect Steve to actually take action against his own people. Although these people were not seriously injured, it was clear that he wanted to be the enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D. Steve still looked calm, not caring at all that he was using S.H.I.E.L.D. to pressure him, and said indifferently, I won't let you take him away before I know the truth. You are making a mistake. He is a wanted criminal of S.H.I.E.L.D. Have you thought about the consequences of letting him go? Langlam spoke angrily, staring at Steve's eyes, and roared, I must report this to Director Fury. Whatever you want. Steve still looked calm. I am just doing what I think is right, and no one can change my will. After that, he turned to Logan and the others and said, you go first, I will talk to you later. Logan frowned slightly after hearing this, retracted his steel claws, held Clarissa's hand, turned to Victor and said, let's go. After that, he quickly ran towards the depths of the jungle. Stop! Seeing that Logan and the others were about to run, Langlam became anxious and immediately ran up to stop them. However, Steve stood in front of him, obviously not letting him catch up easily. Captain, are you really going to betray me? Langlam stared at Steve angrily, gritting his teeth and roaring. Steve said indifferently, not to mention that the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. have no subordinate relationship. Even if there is, I can't continue to stay in your S.H.I.E.L.D., this dirty organization. After some investigation, Steve was extremely disappointed with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s various practices. Now he has no good feelings towards S.H.I.E.L.D. You forced me to do this. Langlam roared, clenched his fists, and hit Steve hard without hesitation. Steve snorted coldly, dodged sideways, and kicked out, directly kicking Langlam several meters away. Langlam covered his aching stomach, stared at Steve, and suddenly pulled out a short blade from his waist and rushed up again. The sharp blade stabbed at Steve without hesitation. Steve frowned, dodged, and instantly entangled with Rumlow. But even with the dagger, how could Rumlow be Steve's opponent? After a few moves, Steve found an opportunity, grabbed Rumlow's hand holding the knife, and twisted it hard. The severe pain forced Rumlow to let go, and the dagger fell. Steve kicked out, knocked the dagger away, and slammed it into the tree trunk in the distance. At the same time, he hit Rumlow's chest hard with his shoulder. The strong force directly knocked Rumlow's whole body away. After sliding in the air for a while, he fell heavily to the ground. "Give up, you can't beat me." Steve stood there, looking at Rumlow, who fell to the ground and wailing in the distance, and shook his head with a bored look on his face. Although Rumlow is the leader among the SHIELD task force, compared with him, the gap is really huge. Cough, cough, cough. At this time, Rumlow's eyes were gloomy, and the dull pain in his chest made him cough uncontrollably, but his eyes were fixed on Steve. Suddenly, he pulled out his pistol from the holster and shot Steve without hesitation. Bang! Flames gushed out from the gun's muzzle, and bullets aimed at Steve's head, but Steve remained very calm, raising his shield to block the door. Bang! The bullet was instantly deflected by the buckler without even leaving a scratch. Putting away the buckler, he looked at Rumlow, sneered, then stopped staying and strode towards the direction where Logan and the others left. Rumlow looked at Steve's back sullenly, his whole face almost sank. Looking at the soldiers lying on the ground around him, he angrily said, "Don't pretend to be dead, get up quickly and chase me." After that, he picked up the walkie-talkie and shouted, "All the teams, gather towards me, we must catch them today." At the same time, in the woods on the other side, 3 figures shuttled quickly. "Steve, remember you?" Victor, who was running wildly, couldn't help but turned his head and asked. He was very surprised by Steve's appearance. After all, he didn't expect that after 70 years, this guy would still be willing to lend a helping hand to Logan, or when they are enemies of SHIELD. Maybe. Logan leads Clarice through the jungle. Steve's appearance also surprised him, but it was precisely because of his appearance that Rumlow and those bastards saved their lives. After all, he was already preparing to use heat vision at that time, but that's fine, it saves him the risk of his new ability being exposed. Otherwise, if the news about his awakening of his abilities spreads, let alone hiding in a Canadian shelter, even if he hides in the mountains and old forests, it will be useless. Trouble will only come one after another, and even the dead bodies will be found. Pulled away to conduct various studies. But he obviously doesn't remember Saber-Toothed Tiger. It seems that your name, Wolverine, is easier for people to remember. Victor suddenly smiled. He also participated in World War II, and his reputation during World War II was much louder than that of Wolverine. Many enemy soldiers and civilians were guaranteed to be frightened out of their wits after hearing his name, but the way Steve looked at him just now didn't look like he was seeing an old friend. Apparently, he had completely forgotten the reputation of the saber-toothed tiger. "I'd rather be forgotten." Logan couldn't help but complain that being remembered by so many people was obviously not a good thing. At this moment, Logan suddenly noticed footsteps approaching quickly from behind. He quickly turned his head to look, and subconsciously reached for the pistol on his waist, and Steve's figure gradually walked out of the jungle and stood in front of Logan. Looking at Steve, who still looked familiar, Logan remained alert and asked in a deep voice from a few meters away, "Why are you helping us?" That he didn't remember that he had such a deep friendship with Steve during World War II. At most, he was just a comrade in the trenches. There was no need for Steve to go against SHIELD for himself. When things go wrong, there must be a monster. Although he helped him, Logan can't completely trust him now. "Calm down." Steve stood still, keeping a safe distance from Logan, and said, "I just want to find the truth." These words stunned Logan. Not only him, but even Victor was slightly stunned and glanced at Logan, wondering what the two of them meant. But before Logan could ask what the truth was, Steve spoke first. "But today is obviously not a good time to get the answer. You have to leave quickly. Hill and the others are very determined to capture you. SHIELD will not give up and will only send more reinforcements. As long as you are caught by SHIELD, you will never be able to escape again in your life, so it's better to let's go quickly." Steve sighed helplessly. Although he desperately wanted to know the answer, it was definitely not the time to talk now, and once Logan and the others are caught by SHIELD, he may never have a chance to have a good talk with Logan. However, Logan's expression suddenly darkened. He looked around warily, and said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid it's not that easy to leave." At this time, he clearly heard dense footsteps coming from around the jungle, and large groups of people were approaching them from all directions. Soon, these soldiers appeared in front of Logan and the others. The soldiers with live ammunition surrounded them like a dragnet. Rumlow walked out of the crowd. The pain in his body made his expression a little distorted, but he still shouted loudly and vigorously, "Logan, I will give you two choices now. Surrender and come back with us. I promise something. It won't happen, otherwise, just wait to be beaten into pieces by bullets." After saying that, he looked at Steve. "Captain, I warn you, don't get involved in this matter anymore, otherwise I can only order you to attack as well." Steve looked at the layers of siege, his expression was a little solemn, but he still shook his head and said, "I don't want to kill people, and I don't want to watch you catch them." Although many of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s actions made him feel ashamed, he believed that it was the fault of the upper management, and these soldiers were innocent, at least they were just following orders. For them, Steve always thought of them as his own people, and he didn't want to attack his own people. At this time, Logan and Victor stood back to back, with Clarice, who was frightened and pale, in the middle. The two of them obviously had no idea about the proposal of surrender, and their steel claws and tiger claws were all stretched out, ready to fight at any time. Victor said excitedly, "It seems that today is a big battle. I haven't felt this feeling for a long time." Logan also nodded. "The only way now is to fight a bloody way out." After that, he ordered Clarice, "Squat down, don't get up, don't panic in any situation." After that, he roared fiercely, his eyes instantly turned red, his steel claws flashed cold light in the sun, and he swooped up like a beast, rushing towards the enemy at an unimaginable speed. After the various attributes of the body were enhanced by 3 points, now he has already surpassed the peak period in terms of speed, strength, and various functions of the body. Steve saw Logan suddenly explode and wanted to speak to stop him, but it was too late. Logan quickly pounced in front of a member of the task force, and the steel claws swept across. The terrified head of the member was instantly sprayed with blood, rolling continuously in the air, and fell to the ground with a clang. At this moment, he seemed to have completely become the Wolf King in the forest, constantly dodging and moving in the tree trunks, his body completely turned into a trail of afterimages, rushing left and right among the soldiers. Wherever the steel claws passed, the cold light was extremely dazzling, and blood kept splashing, as if a grand bloody rain was falling in the forest. Minced meat, broken arms, and even human heads were all flying in the air, slaughtering any enemy who wanted to capture them. "Ah! Here! Shoot!" The panicked voices came one after another in the forest, and all the soldiers were completely panicked. They raised their guns and fired, but the other side ignored the attack of the bullets. Even against the soldiers strafing, he rushed in front of the soldiers. In an instant, his arms and guns were like fragile branches, easily chopped by the steel claws. The pain made the soldiers scream, but soon the steel claws swept across his neck, and the terrified head flew directly, like a bloody ball, rolling heavily to the ground. Victor on the other side was no less fierce. His tiger claws kept tearing the enemy's chest, and he was crushing the enemy's heart as if he was squeezing a bouncy ball. The blood and flesh that spurted out made Victor feel a long-lost excitement, and he sniffed the bloody smell with enjoyment. As long as he passed by, no soldier's body could be preserved intact, and they were all torn into pieces by the claws. The bloody smell was completely filled in the woods, and the flying blood completely dyed everything around red. Human intestines and livers were hanging on the branches, and hot blood was dripping from the leaves. The ground was full of corpses and limbs, and the heads that kept opening and closing before death were rolling on the ground like balls. Anyone with poor psychological quality, as long as they took a look at this, would be guaranteed to vomit the dinner of the day before yesterday, and might even be scared to death. At this time, Logan and Victor were like killing gods from hell, and they started killing thoroughly. "Fuck." Steve looked at the chaotic battle and couldn't help cursing loudly, but now he had no time to intervene. Bullets were flying in the air, screams were heard, blood and flesh filled the forest. Even if he wanted to intervene, he couldn't stop this group of crazy people. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that a soldier in the distance was aiming at Logan's head from behind. Seeing that the soldier was about to shoot, Steve gritted his teeth, struggled for a while, and finally threw out the shield in his hand. The shield fell heavily on the man and knocked him out directly. Steve understood that if he wanted to reduce casualties now, he could only try to knock out these members of the advance team, otherwise they would only become the dead souls under the claws of Logan and Victor. Thinking of this, He quickly rushed into the battle, followed Logan and the others, and continued to attack the members of the advance team, but he kept his strength in every move, only knocking them out, not harming their lives. Even before Logan or Victor was about to kill someone, he would pull the person back, knock them out and kick them out of the battle to save these lives. At the same time, Rumlow, who was outside the battle, looked gloomy. "Damn you, you really don't worry about the bullets at all," that he clearly saw that any bullets that hit Logan and Victor would soon be squeezed out by the muscles, and the wounds would heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, Logan, who was fighting in the crowd, also noticed Rumlow. He was furious and had completely killed. He turned around and rushed directly towards Rumlow. Seeing Logan's swift speed, Rumlow was completely panicked and quickly raised his gun to shoot. Bang bang bang. But the whistling bullets could not stop Logan's speed at all, which only made him more angry, and he continued to rush forward with gritted teeth. Now his self-healing factor is about to be fully restored, and the damage from ordinary bullets will no longer have any effect on him. Ha! After a flash, Logan came in front of Rumlow, and his fist whistled down, instantly knocking Rumlow away, hitting a big tree heavily and falling to the ground. He stood up in pain and tried to fight back, but in front of Logan, his fighting skills were just like a child's, completely without any objectivity. After just one encounter, Logan grabbed Rumlow's neck and lifted him up like a chicken, staring at him with red eyes. The feeling of suffocation made Rumlow struggle constantly, but even though the haze of death loomed over his head, he still snorted at Logan. "Logan, kill me, you so-called Wolverine, you are just a freak that no one wants, you simply don't deserve to live in this world." Logan, who was already furious, heard this sarcasm, pinched Rumlow's palm again, and said in an extremely cold voice, "This sentence will only make you die ugly." After saying that, he stretched out his steel claws without hesitation and tore open Rumlow's chest. Regardless of Rumlow's painful struggle, he stared at the beating heart under his chest. Crack. The steel claws penetrated the heart directly, stirring it randomly, and instantly turned all of Rumlow's internal organs into a pool of blood. "Don't!" Steve in the distance suddenly saw this scene, but when he wanted to come to stop it, all of Rumlow's organs had already turned into a pool of minced meat, and blood splattered all over the ground. Chapter 83 Captain America's Suspicion, the more chaotic the better. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang! Rumlow's body was thrown down by Logan with disdain, and the fear before death still remained on his face. Logan looked at the blood on his hands, rubbed them against the tree in annoyance, and wiped off the blood. "What are you doing?" Taiwan Novel Network. Circled M. Behind him, Steve's furious voice suddenly came. He looked at Rumlow's body and was a little dazed for a while. After all, they had performed missions together. Although their friendship was not too deep, they were more or less comrades in arms, but now they were killed by Logan. Steve suddenly regretted coming to help Logan. Maybe Logan was a hero in World War II, but now he seems to have become a thug who slaughters lives. And if he didn't help him, maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't have such a large number of casualties. Maybe letting him be caught and controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D. is the safest way to deal with it. "Steve, before you blame me, you should check what they did to me." Logan glanced at Steve, his expression unusually calm. He knew very well that Steve's appearance was insignificant to the battle situation. Even if he didn't come, the result would be the same. Since Rumlow led the team to encircle him, his death was already a foregone conclusion. After saying that, Logan turned around to check Victor's injuries. At this time, Victor had dealt with the remaining task force soldiers, but his condition was not very good. He was soaked in blood and full of bullet holes. The flesh and blood that were blown up by bullets were constantly bleeding. The self-healing factor was trying to repair these injuries, but his body is really not as good as before. The speed of self-healing factor repair is very limited and the repair speed is very slow. But fortunately, it is not fatal. He is sitting under a big tree and breathing heavily, staring coldly at Steve. On the other side, Clarice squatted under a big tree with her hands on her head, looking at the horrible battle in the forest. Her little face was pale with fear and her body couldn't stop shaking. A 13-year-old girl, exposed to these bloody scenes, will inevitably be frightened. Logan sighed helplessly and shook her head. but since she has awakened her ability and become a mutant, she will have to face these things sooner or later. Thinking of this, he walked to Victor, helped him up, and waved to Clarice, "Let's go, when their support catches up. We won't be able to leave." Clarice's face was pale and she slowly stood up with the help of the tree trunk, and her legs trembled as she came to Logan. Just as the few people were about to leave, Steve stopped them in front with a gloomy look. "Logan, no one can kill so many people and still get away with it." He stared at Logan. "Come back with me, I promise you will receive the most fair trial, and I will never let those guys frame you." He investigated Logan's case, many of which were suspicious cases without sufficient evidence chain. This is one of the reasons why he felt sorry for Logan, but after what happened now, he couldn't let Logan continue to slaughter. After arresting Logan, he would be involved in the case review and would never let those guys frame him. Logan glanced at him indifferently, and suddenly sneered sarcastically, as if laughing at his naivety, and then helped Victor bypass Steve and wanted to continue to escape into the depths of the jungle. Steve looked gloomy and roared loudly, "Stop!" As he spoke, he swung the round shield in his hand, the round shield with the stars and stripes cut through the air, drawing a sharp arc in the air, with gusts of whistling wind, wrapped in a particularly terrifying force, and rushed towards Logan. Without hesitation. At such a speed, the sharp round shield can even easily cut a big tree in half. However, Logan just glanced at it, and with a swish, the steel claws stretched out and chopped down heavily on the flying round shield. Bang! The steel claws collided with the round shield, sparks flew, the sound of steel colliding resounded throughout the forest, and the round shield flew backwards instantly. Steve took the round shield and looked at Logan, who was still standing there. His expression was cold, but he was extremely surprised in his heart. He could feel that Logan's strength seemed to have become stronger again. "You know, the attack just now was not so easy for ordinary people to block," but Logan not only blocked it, but also used only one hand. This made Steve couldn't help but think of the port of New York before. That was the first time he and Logan encountered each other. Logan at that time was far less powerful than he is now. "Steve, I don't want to fight with you, don't force me." Logan stared at Steve with cold eyes. For this former comrade-in-arms in World War II, Logan didn't want to make things too awkward with him, and he understood Steve's behavior very well. Before being frozen, he was a super soldier of the country, and he fought for justice and fairness at that time. But what he didn't know was that too many things had happened in the past 70 years, and many things were no longer the same as before. The so-called justice and fairness had long been manipulated by those in power and became a reason to harm others. Now he still looks at everything with the thinking of 70 years ago, which only makes him look too idealistic and too naive. "I can't let you leave like this." After saying that, Steve rushed towards Logan with a round shield in his hand. Logan sighed helplessly and had to put down Victor, stretching out his steel claws and facing Steve head-on. Soon, Steve rushed to the front and chopped down the round shield in his hand without hesitation. The whistling round shield was like a giant axe, slashing Logan's face. But Logan twisted his body and dodged the attack. This speed shocked Steve, and even a little panic appeared on his face. He looked at the empty buckler, and then looked at Logan in shock. Not only his strength, but his speed has also improved a lot. Steve was extremely shocked, but before he could speak, Logan suddenly kicked him hard. Bang! A dull voice sounded, and Steve's chest was hit hard by Logan. The powerful force directly knocked him away dozens of steps. Feeling the sharp pain in his chest, Steve couldn't help but fall into thought. He could clearly feel that Logan's power was far more terrifying than before. How did he do this? Steve looked at Logan in disbelief, frowned, gritted his teeth, and charged at Logan with his buckler again. Logan took a deep breath. His steel claws flashed with cold light, and he stared at Steve calmly. In just an instant, the two started fighting in the woods. The steel claws and bucklers collided continuously. The sound of steel clashing echoed through the forest, and sparks flew everywhere. The figures of the two people kept flashing in the sparks, and the impact of the steel claws and bucklers was a competition of strength and speed, as well as a competition of fighting skills. But, how could Steve be a match for Logan, whose attributes have been enhanced? After a collision, Logan caught Steve's negligence and violently lifted the buckler away with his steel claws. At the same time, he kicked Steve several meters away again and fell heavily to the ground. The corners of his mouth slowly oozed. Bleeding, each of Logan's attacks was packed with powerful power. Even though his body had been strengthened, it was inevitable that he would feel pain from these attacks. Steve lay on the ground, gasping for air, and reached out to retrieve the buckler that fell beside him, but a big foot stepped on the buckler. Steve looked at Logan, who came in front of him, his eyes full of indescribable surprise. He couldn't imagine that just such a short time had passed. Not only did Logan look much younger, his strength and speed had increased unimaginably, and even his fighting skills seemed to have improved to a higher level. In terms of fighting skills, Steve now can't imagine who else could be Logan's opponent. He was shocked, but Steve's attitude remained unchanged. He looked at Logan and said in a deep voice, "Logan, you make me think there is something wrong with my vision. Look at yourself. You are full of energy now. What's the difference between being covered in blood and those thugs from World War II?" Logan just looked down at him, sighed, and slowly took back his foot on the buckler. "Give up those naive ideas of yours, Steve. If your situation is the same as mine, you will change too." After saying that, he shook his head and said, "Be careful of the people in S.H.I.E.L.D. Don't think too much of S.H.I.E.L.D. They are not the people you think they are. See it clearly for yourself, so as not to be caught by someone one day. Stabbed in the back." After saying that, he turned around and helped Victor up, took Clarissa's little hand, and walked deep into the jungle together. Steve picked up the shield and looked at Logan's back. After thinking for a while, he sighed and gave up the pursuit. Instead, he leaned under the big tree, gasping for breath. At the same time, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and unconsciously flashed in his mind what Logan just said. He couldn't quite understand what Logan meant. What did it mean that everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. was not one of his own? Does this mean there is a problem within S.H.I.E.L.D.? Or is there something wrong with Nick Fury or other senior executives? Steve frowned as he thought, and felt that the doubts in front of him became much thicker with the appearance of Logan. After a long time, Steve suddenly heard footsteps approaching quickly. Soon, Hill appeared in the jungle with a large group of people. Seeing this bloody scene, his pupils suddenly tightened and he couldn't help but take a breath. Even after many years in S.H.I.E.L.D., such bloody scenes are not often encountered. At this time, she also noticed Steve sitting under a tree trunk in the distance. She couldn't help but be stunned, and then walked up with a frown. "Captain, why are you here? What happened here?" Steve stood up, sighed helplessly, and dragged out everything that had just happened without hiding anything. "What, Langlum is dead too?" Hill was shocked when he heard the news of Langlum's death. He quickly looked around and found Langlum, who was gradually stiffening. Under his torn chest, all the organs were almost empty. Seeing Langlum's tragic situation, Hill reprimanded Steve. "Captain, I told you, you shouldn't get involved in this matter." Obviously, she believes that it was Steve's intervention that found a way out for Logan and caused S.H.I.E.L.D. to suffer such huge losses. Steve shook his head and sighed. "Even if I don't come, the outcome will not change at all. Your intelligence on Wolverine is out of date, and he is completely different from the description in your S.H.I.E.L.D. intelligence." He had seen S.H.I.E.L.D.'s intelligence on Wolverine. In that intelligence, Wolverine was just a dying old wolf, posing no threat at all, but the fight just now made Steve understand that Wolverine has changed now, at least in terms of strength, which is completely different from what was reported. Different? Hill was stunned for a moment and looked at Steve in confusion. Steve sighed and continued to nod. "He has become younger and stronger. Bullets have no effect on him at all. They only increase his rage. He has almost immortal self-healing ability, and his injuries can be healed in a short time. He recovers quickly within a short period of time, and his strength, speed, fighting skills, etc. are far beyond what your intelligence says. Even if I don't come, if Langlum and the others encounter him, they will end up exactly the same." As soon as these words came out, Hilton suddenly took a breath of air, and then seemed to think of something, and his expression gradually became serious. If Steve hadn't lied, then Logan's self-healing abilities might have been fully restored. After all, it is impossible for the enhanced serum to allow him to sustain the battle for such a long time. The only possibility is that the X gene in his body has broken through the suppression of genetically modified food. And his self-healing factor gradually repaired his body with the breakthrough of the X gene, and he began to become younger and stronger. Thinking of this, Hill realized the seriousness of the matter and quickly walked to the corner and dialed Fury's communication. "Director, Wolverine escaped, and..." She glanced at Steve and reported the truth, and Steve also appeared at the scene, and he admitted to helping Wolverine. Fury nodded without surprise. He was not surprised by Steve's presence. He knew very well that this was Steve's style. As long as he thought something was right, he would never change it because of other things. "Rumlow is dead too." Hill spoke again, except for a few members of the task force who were knocked unconscious by Steve. The rest were killed by Wolverine and Saber-Toothed Tiger, suffering heavy losses. There was silence on the other end of the communication for a while, and then a deep voice came, "Since Steve is here, don't you stop him from killing people." He knew Steve's character very well, and there was absolutely no way he would allow Logan and the others to massacre indiscriminately. "He's unstoppable," Hill bluntly said. "Now Wolverine's strength is suspected to have recovered, at least Steve is not his opponent." How is that possible? That when Fury heard this, he couldn't help but scream in surprise, and then asked in a deep voice, "Are you sure it's not an enhancement serum?" "Most likely not," Hill said solemnly. "The enhanced serum cannot last for long, and if too much enhanced serum is injected, it will cause irreversible damage to the human body. According to estimates, if Wolverine wants to use the serum to fight for such a long time, then the amount is far beyond the lethal amount." After hearing these words, Fury fell into silence again, his eyes solemn, and his whole person was lost in thought. He really didn't expect that Wolverine's X gene would be so tenacious and could counteract the suppression of genetic modification. If this is the case, then Wolverine will be extremely dangerous, even more terrifying than before. After all, he had been suppressed so hard in recent years that he was hunted down like a rat crossing the street. Fury couldn't imagine how he would release all these years of resentment after regaining his strength. "I understand. I will continue to trace his whereabouts and report back in time if there is any situation." After speaking, Fury hung up the communication, sat on the chair in the office, frowned tightly, and looked out the window. He didn't know whether Logan's transformation from decline to prosperity was an isolated case or a trend among mutants. If this is a trend, it would be terrible. It would indicate that mutants seem to be resurrecting and becoming an unimaginable organization. Fury really didn't expect that so many years had passed. He originally thought that mutants would completely disappear in the long river of history. But now, they seem to be rising again. The X gene seems to be endless. In the jungle, Logan and Victor kept walking back and forth, and Clarice was pulled by them to follow behind. As time goes by, Victor's injuries have gradually recovered, and the bullet holes in his body have slowly healed. Although he has not fully recovered, there is no big problem in moving on his own. At this time, he kept thinking about the conversation between Logan and Steve just now, and couldn't help but turned his head and asked, "Jimmy, what you just said to Steve was to provoke him and S.H.I.E.L.D. relation?" "No." Logan shook his head, but offered no explanation. If S.H.I.E.L.D. had a good relationship with them, or if they didn't pursue them, he could tell S.H.I.E.L.D. that they were hiding Hydra spies, but now these guys are their enemies, so let S.H.I.E.L.D. have a headache. Moreover, once the information is revealed, Hydra's spies learn that he has their information, and he might even be targeted by Hydra's people. Hydra is no better than S.H.I.E.L.D. The latter is at least an overt organization, and everything it does is somewhat conscientious and will not go too far, but Hydra is different. To achieve their goals, they will never give up. If they are locked in, Logan knows that he will face even greater trouble. Victor listened to Logan's words, but smiled and said, "I think you are just sowing discord, but your method is too low level. A guy like Steve will not be affected by these few words of yours. If you take the bait, you are a bit redundant and will not have any effect." Logan just glanced at him, smiled and stopped talking. He naturally knew that Steve would not break up with S.H.I.E.L.D. just because of his few words, but he also knew that Steve would investigate S.H.I.E.L.D. because of what he said. Once he found out the existence of Hydra undercovers and reported it to Fury and other senior executives, it would be Fury and his team who would have a headache. To eliminate these Hydra undercovers who have been lurking for many years, it can be said to be a big loss for S.H.I.E.L.D., after all, they are hiding in various departments of S.H.I.E.L.D., and by then, Fury and his team will only be troubled by their own internal affairs, and will not have so much time to care about mutants. Logan did this to buy himself some breathing time. The more chaotic the world is, the more chaotic S.H.I.E.L.D. is, and the better the situation is for mutants. Chapter 84 The enemy and I share the same origin, the activities of the patrol team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Taiwan Novel Network Diamond Suit, Shelter Farm. In order to complete the teaching tasks assigned to the professor, McCarter transformed a conference room into a temporary classroom. Even the desks and blackboards were tailor-made for Charles to facilitate his lectures from a wheelchair. In addition to the common subjects such as mathematics, science, and social studies, the curriculum also adds a new course on X-gene research. After all, everyone here is a mutant. Knowing more about the X-gene will also make it easier for them to learn and control their own abilities. At this time, the classroom was full of students, ranging in age from 6 or 7 to 12 or 13 years old. These children either escaped from the laboratory, or their mutant abilities were discovered and were hunted down by pickets. Basically, I have never studied hard in the classroom since I was a child. Now that I can step into the classroom again, everyone seems to be particularly serious. On the podium, Charles sat in a wheelchair and wrote a big X on the blackboard, then turned the wheelchair and faced the students. Hello, students, in today's class we will talk about the origin of the... I believe that everyone is familiar with the X gene. Everyone here is a mutant. You have been dealing with the X gene since you awakened your abilities. Charles looked at the students and spoke slowly. While speaking, he looked through the lesson plans he had prepared. After thinking for a while, he continued, but you may not be aware that the X gene is not actually unique to mutants. Every one of us, whether mutants or ordinary people, has X genes in our bodies, but these genes are recessive most of the time. And some people's X gene is relatively active. After reaching a certain age, the abilities in the body will awaken on their own, acquire mutant abilities, and become mutants. The X gene in some people is not active, but due to the influence of external factors, such as emotions, major blows, etc., the X gene is accidentally activated, awakens the ability, and becomes a mutant. But in essence, we are all human beings. It's just that the X gene part of the gene chain has been activated. There is no distinction between high and low. Charles talked eloquently to the students, and he seemed to have regained the feeling of teaching students. Professor. At this time, Laura suddenly raised her hand and interrupted Charles's speech. Charles was not angry at such an interruption. He just looked at her kindly, nodded with a smile and said, Laura, tell me. He liked children who asked questions like this very much. It meant that they at least listened and thought about it themselves, which was a good thing. Laura asked curiously, according to your theory, does it mean that everyone has the opportunity to become a mutant? Charles nodded happily and said without hesitation, yes, theoretically everyone has the potential to become a mutant, but whether he can awaken his ability mainly depends on whether the X gene in his body is active. Some people's genes are very active and will show their mutant ability with a little stimulation, while some people's genes are relatively inert and difficult to awaken. This all varies from person to person. After a pause, he added, the differences in the X gene are all innate. We cannot change them easily, nor will they be transferred by our will. After listening, all the students nodded seriously, but only a few frowned. Carl, who escaped from the laboratory, questioned with a look of resentment, Professor, according to your theory, we are basically the same as ordinary people, except for slight differences in the X gene. Why should the outside world do this? Suppress us? Even many people don't treat us as human beings. He has suffered too much in the laboratory and cannot understand why ordinary people who consider themselves normal have so much prejudice against mutants. When Charles heard this, he also sighed lonely, shook his head and said, this is related to the social sciences that I will learn in the future, but it is okay to talk about it now. Many people are prejudiced against us, mainly because of their inner fear of unknown forces. This is a normal reaction when faced with threats. And not everyone hates us. Most people have been brainwashed by those in power. Those in power are afraid of the abilities of our mutants and worry that we will harm their current status and the stability of their regime. In order to eliminate these hidden dangers, we can only try our best to suppress us and the X gene in our bodies. I hope everyone will not have so much malice towards ordinary people. They are just ordinary poor people who have been deceived by the government. After listening to the professor's words, Carl nodded thoughtfully, and then asked worriedly, "Then will we mutants gradually disappear?" It is said that with the emergence of genetically modified foods, the number of X-gene awakenings has decreased sharply. Won't. Charles shook his head decisively. Mutants will not disappear because the X gene will not be depressed by the suppression of genetically modified foods. It will gradually adapt to the pressure of genetically modified foods. When they completely adapt to the suppressive force of genetically modified foods, they will follow these evolve under pressure to break out of the cocoon and be reborn. As long as humans are still there, mutants will not become extinct. After all, the X gene exists in the innate gene chains, and humans cannot completely eradicate these gene chains. Charles always believed that the decline of mutants was only temporary. Even if their generation of mutants completely died out, even if all mutants disappeared, new mutants would regenerate in a few decades. As long as humans are still alive, mutants will not really disappear. It is just that the X gene needs a process of adaptation. At this time, another child raised his hand and asked, "Professor, according to what you said, mutants are actually humans, and humans are actually mutants. There is no difference between us. Strictly speaking, we are a community with some subtle changes in the genetic chain." Looking at the child's innocent eyes, Charles suddenly fell silent. He didn't know how to answer for a while. He wanted to nod. In his opinion, humans and mutants were the same species, and there was no difference, but now the hatred of mutants by humans outside makes him unable to nod his head. He didn't want these mutant children to be hostile to humans, but he also didn't want them to naively think that humans were good friends. People are all diverse. People who are stronger than themselves have some fear and even dare not approach them. As more people have these fears, they gradually turn into discrimination. This is the innate normal psychology of human beings, and it is not easy to change. Unless one day we can completely eliminate the strange view of ordinary people towards mutants, and accept these similar people who are different from ourselves from the bottom of our hearts, mutants and humans will only ordinary people have a chance to coexist peacefully. But on that day, at least Charles couldn't see any hope at the moment. They need a mutant leader who can successfully break everyone's discrimination, so that humans can face the existence of mutants, instead of talking about it with disdain like today. This person, he hopes to be Logan, and it can only be Logan, but the current Logan still needs a long time to grow up. Professor, Logan and the others are back. At this moment, Caliban suddenly ran into the classroom in a hurry, interrupting Charles and the children's thinking. Hearing Caliban's words, Charles was stunned for a moment, and then said excitedly, "Quick, push me over and have a look." After saying that, he seemed to have remembered something, and turned to face these things and said, "Sorry, kids. I have some urgent matters to deal with now. You should study by yourself first. If I haven't come back by the time the get out of class is over, you can leave get out of class freely." After speaking, he looked at Carl and said, "Carl, please pay attention to classroom discipline." Carl nodded. They came to the shelter together from the gathering place. They had known Charles for a longer time and were more familiar with each other. Charles let Carl take care of everything in class. After finishing speaking, the professor asked Caliban to push him out of the house anxiously, and at the same time asked worriedly, "Are they okay?" "I don't know either. I saw them coming back on a motorcycle. Before I had a chance to ask, I came over to inform you." Caliban also pushed Charles out with a look of anxiety. As soon as they went out, they saw a motorcycle parked not far away. Logan and Victor got out of the car with a girl. After seeing that there were no obvious injuries on their bodies, Charles and Caliban let out a long sigh of relief. After more than 10 years of getting along, they have become like family to each other. At the same time, Lorna and Sonia, who were busy elsewhere, learned the news of Logan's return from the guard at the door and ran over. The two circled around Logan and Victor. Lorna couldn't help but ask, "Are you okay?" Why did you suddenly clash with the pickets? Yes. Sonia's face was full of worry. It scared us. Something happened. Logan sighed helplessly and roughly told what happened. After escaping the pursuit, Victor and I lost our means of transportation. The pickup truck was destroyed by SHIELD people. Fortunately, we didn't go far and found a second-hand motorcycle seller on the roadside. Merchant, we bought a motorcycle and are just coming back. After Logan finished speaking, a heavy voice suddenly came, you have a conflict with SHIELD. Macka came over anxiously. He originally wanted to come to greet Logan and the others, but he didn't expect to hear the news that made him frown as soon as he got close. Logan did not hide anything and said truthfully, I had some conflicts with them and killed many of them. After all, this shelter was built by Macka. Logan believed that this information should be truthfully explained to Macka. When Macka heard these words, his face instantly darkened. Logan, you are too reckless. That he spoke calmly and looked at Logan with cold eyes, clenching his fists as if he was trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart. Logan did not speak and remained silent. He understands Macka's current mood very well. After all, not many people in this world are willing to provoke SHIELD. Once the SHIELD people target this place, the shelter will be destroyed in an instant. As the founder of the shelter, he never wanted to see this happen. After thinking for a while, Logan finally said, I don't want to conflict with them, but at that time, there is nothing we can do. And don't worry, we checked carefully before coming back and didn't leave any clues. You won't find it here. After listening to Logan's words, Macka breathed a sigh of relief, but his expression was still cold, and he said in a deep voice, let's talk in my office. After speaking, he led everyone to his office. In addition to a few of them, Macka also notified John, Marcus, Klaus and others, including the professor, Clarice, and Logan. Macka's office was almost filled. Macka sat at his desk, staring at Logan and Victor. He regretted letting these two dangerous guys participate in the procurement mission. Logan didn't say anything, but he noticed that the whole office fell into absolute silence in Macka's anger. It seems that the people in the shelter are absolutely obedient to Macka. After a moment, Macka broke the silence himself and asked, does SHIELD know the situation of the shelter? Logan thought for a while and shook his head. It should not be clear, otherwise they would not easily attack me, but would follow me to find the exact location of the shelter before taking action. Macka was relieved a little, and then he said angrily, damn it, why is SHIELD here? This is Canada, not the United States. Although SHIELD people will also carry out missions all over the world, their main range of activities is still in the United States. There are very few people outside the United States, but why did they encounter Logan and his people? It should be something that happened in the prison a few days ago. Lorna suddenly spoke. The prison was in chaos at the time, and several of us used our mutant abilities. SHIELD might be here to investigate that. I hope so. Macka sighed helplessly. If it was just about the prison, it would be fine, because at least the shelter was not exposed, and they handled the prison incident very well, leaving no tails, so they would not find the exact location of the shelter so quickly. After thinking deeply, Macka looked up at Logan and Victor, and still couldn't help but feel a little angry. After all, he didn't dare to confront SHIELD head-on now. These two guys killed a lot of SHIELD people, which was too reckless and too dangerous. But the incident had already happened, and he couldn't chase them out now. He finally sighed helplessly and said tiredly, there's nothing we can do now. Let's pray that we won't be discovered. Tell the patrolman to be careful. Don't make any big noises in the near future, so as not to be discovered by SHIELD. Don't go out for a short time. Yes. John and Marcus, who were in charge of patrol work, nodded in agreement. At this time, Logan glanced at Clarice behind him, and pushed her out after seeing the image. This is Clarice, a space mutant. I hope the shelter can take him in. Logan pushed Clarice in front of Macka. Space. Macka was immediately interested. The mutant ability of this department was almost as rare as that of the professor's mind department. Clarice nodded, thought for a while, and focused on a pen on Macka's desk. Ripples suddenly appeared in the space, and two cracks slowly tore open, one in front of Clarice and one on Macka's pen. Clarice reached into the crack in front of her, and her hand emerged from another crack, grabbing Macka's pen, and then pulled it back. And the crack disappeared. She held the pen, looked at Macka nervously, and then carefully returned the pen. Although her mutant ability is not too strong, she can still use it at will in such a short distance and small space of less than 1 meter. Logan introduced Macka. She escaped from a laboratory and has been hunted by the patrol team since she came out. Now she has nowhere to go. I hope the shelter can take her in. As he spoke, Clarice looked at Macka sincerely. After thinking for a while, Logan said again, according to Clarice, we should investigate the laboratory she escaped from. The people in the laboratory seem to have cooperated with the patrol team and have some abnormal transactions. I think we need this information. Everyone frowned. The laboratory cooperated with the patrol team, which means that the mutants captured by the patrol team are likely to be sent to that laboratory. This matter had to attract their attention. After all, some of their companions who were arrested by the patrol team might be detained there. After thinking for a while, Macka looked at Clarice and nodded. The girl can stay, but the matter of the laboratory, let's talk about it later. If there is any more noise now, it will be too dangerous for the shelter. Everyone nodded. This is the only way now. In the face of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s search, they must hide themselves. You go back first, Logan. You stay for a while. I want to talk to you about something. Macka waved to everyone, and everyone left the office, while Logan looked at Macka puzzledly, not knowing what to talk about. Macka motioned Logan to sit down, and then looked at him curiously, and asked in surprise, Logan, how are you feeling recently? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Logan was stunned by this confusing question, and asked in confusion, nothing, everything is fine, what's wrong? Nothing. Macka smiled, just a greeting. After that, he opened his drawer and took out a small gift box containing a mechanical watch. From the logo on the gift box, it can be seen that this watch is definitely expensive. I haven't had time to thank you for Luna's matter. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to rescue her. While speaking, he handed the gift box to Logan. This is what I received when I was doing business before. It was a gift exchange with some business friends. It's just that this watch doesn't match me very well, and I have never worn it, but it's perfect for you. I'll give it to you as a thank you gift for saving Luna. Logan looked at the gift box, waved his hands quickly and said, this is all what I should do, and it's not just my fault. But this watch suits you best. Macka suddenly smiled and said, take it, it will only rust if you leave it here. Logan hesitated, then finally nodded and accepted, thank you. Okay, that's it, you can go, I still need to read some information. Macka smiled at Logan, and then added, remember to have class tomorrow. The school in the shelter has been open for a few days, but because you and Victor are not here, the training classes have been delayed. Logan nodded and left the office. After the door of the office was closed, Macka looked at the chair where Logan had sat, suddenly stood up and sat on it, lightly touched the table with his palm, and picked up a shiny black hair. Looking closely at the desk lamp, this does not look like the hair color that an elderly person should have at all, more like a lively young man. Macka looked at this hair, recalling Logan's appearance that seemed to be getting younger day by day, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Chapter 85, Macka's Great Ambitions. S.H.I.E.L.D. is in trouble. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. In the bathroom, the mist was rising. Logan wiped the water stains on his body with a towel, stood in front of the mirror, stretched out his hand to scrape away the water mist on the mirror, and looked at himself in the mirror. The strong muscles on his body looked very wild, and all the bullet holes on his body had disappeared. The skin that had become loose before was now compact again. It is hard to imagine that 2 days ago, this body was full of bullet holes, but now it has been completely restored to its original state thanks to the repair of the self-healing factor. This also shows that the recovery ability of the self-healing factor has gradually returned to its peak state. Many of the wrinkles on his face have also disappeared, with only 1 or 2 unclear wrinkles remaining at the corners of his eyes. This face now looks like he is only 40 years old at most. There is no trace of aging anymore, and instead he looks like a man in his prime. Of vitality, the messy hair on the head is also becoming rosy day by day, and the white hair is turning black day by day. Now it is almost invisible. Only by pulling out the hairline can you vaguely find a few white hairs among the black hair. The self-healing factors gradually recovered and continue to repair his body. The aging cells seem to be re-energized. The word old was constantly saying goodbye and striding away from this body. Logan looked at himself in the mirror and couldn't help but feel a little dazed. He didn't know whether to be happy or sad for a moment. Being young again is a good thing. It allows him to accomplish many feats that he has not accomplished before, but if he returns to his youthful state so quickly, the recovery of his self-healing factor will most likely not be concealed. Just by looking at the changes in his appearance during this period, you can guess the secret of his self-healing factor. Logan smiled bitterly, wiped the water on his face, changed into a set of clean clothes, and walked out of the bathroom. Victor was sitting on the coffee table, playing with the mechanical watch that Logan brought back. When he saw Logan coming out, he said dissatisfiedly, "I also participated in the operation, and Macka only gave you the watch. It's so partial. If you want it, just wear it." Logan said with an indifferent expression. He had never been interested in these decorative things. He would wear them if he had them. If he didn't have them, he wouldn't think about it or force them. Don't want. Victor threw the watch to Logan with a look of disgust. "I don't like this kind of junk worth hundreds of dollars." Logan took it and put it on directly and said with a smile, "I feel good." The dark green dial looks very textured, the exquisite metal strap and the ticking hands have the charm of a successful person. Victor rolled his eyes aside. At this moment, the door opened and Caliban pushed the professor back into the living room. "Back." Logan greeted the two of them with a smile and asked, "How is it? Is the teaching going well?" Charles smiled and nodded repeatedly. "It's much simpler than I thought. The children are very eager to learn and have great ideas. Everyone has lofty ideals." Having said this, the professor couldn't help but show a kind look, recalling the scenes of those children listening intently in class, as if he saw the hope of mutants right in front of him. Caliban then added, "Those children are very idealistic, much like the professors when they were young. They think mutants can get along well with humans, but I feel that this is too ideal, at least in the short term." When Charles heard this, he fell into silence and did not speak. Having ideals is a good thing. Logan just smiled and said, "In the future, their ideals will become reality." Suddenly, he thought of something and took the initiative to say, "In addition, S.H.I.E.L.D. may know about the recovery of my self-healing factor. During this encounter with them, they all saw the changes in my appearance and the fact that my body was hit by bullets. The speed of Zhongho's self-healing cannot be hidden for too long. People in S.H.I.E.L.D. are not all idiots. As long as they review the battle process, Hill will definitely quickly deduce that Logan's self-healing factor has been restored. Just discover it, it's inevitable." Charles shook his head helplessly. After all, the effect of the self-healing factor is passive, and it will also repair Logan's old appearance, which cannot be hidden at all. After finishing speaking, Charles suddenly became serious, stared at Logan and ordered, "But except for the self-healing factor, other abilities must not be exposed, otherwise it will be completely ruined, and those guys will spare no effort to find you." After the self-healing factor is restored, at most it means that Logan's X gene has broken through the suppression of genetically modified foods. This only shows that Logan's X gene is relatively tenacious and will not attract much attention, but once the new ability is exposed, it will let all laboratory organizations know that the X gene in Logan's body is evolving. Once this news leaks out, the entire biological laboratory related to mutant research will go completely crazy, and all major government departments will go all out. At that time, Logan really wanted to fight against the entire country with his own strength. "Don't worry, I'll be careful." Logan nodded, and then said with cold eyes, "If I have to be exposed, I will not let anyone leave alive." After finally arriving at the mutant shelter, he didn't want to give up these relatively peaceful days easily. While they were talking, Caliban kept staring at Logan's wrist and looking at the watch. After the conversation between the two ended, he exclaimed with a look of surprise, "An Omega watch? This is not cheap." "Logan, where did you get it from?" That because he had been in the black market, he recognized the brand of the watch at a glance. Among mechanical watches, Omega is definitely one of the well-known brands. He looked at it carefully. This watch is at least 1,000, and it looks really good. Macka gave it to me. Logan was a little uncomfortable and covered the watch with his long sleeves. At this time, the door was suddenly knocked. Logan opened the door and it was Lorna Dane. The girl smiled and said, "The campfire party is about to start. Do you want to join?" Campfire party. Logan was a little surprised. Lorna nodded and said, "It's very lively." Macka said that newcomers to the shelter should try to join. Logan was stunned for a moment, thought about it, glanced at Caliban and others behind him, and said with a smile, "Let's go." The sky fell completely into darkness, and the sky was dotted with stars. Lorna strode in front, followed by Logan and Victor, and Caliban pushed the professor on the other side. In fact, there was no need for Lorna to lead the way. As soon as he went out, Logan saw a dazzling fire in the center of the farm in the distance, and there were faint bursts of children's laughter. Lorna smiled and explained, "The campfire party is an event specially organized by Macka. It is held every 2 weeks. Everyone plays around the fireflies, chats together, eats snacks and looks at the stars. It is very lively. It is mainly used to promote the relationship between everyone and liven up the atmosphere of the shelter." Logan listened and nodded repeatedly. Although the shelter is good, it is isolated from the world and is really secluded. If there are no activities like this to enrich the entertainment, many people will not be able to bear it. And such activities can also make more people feel a sense of belonging to the shelter, so that some children who have left their families since childhood can feel the warmth of home again. Macka is really an excellent leader. Leaders who can think of others like this are rare now. Caliban looked at the grand bonfire in the distance with emotion, and his face suddenly became very enjoyable. There is no danger here, no damn high temperature and scorching sun, and there is a leader like Macka who is willing to consider every little bit of life. For him, this is just like heaven. Victor couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and teased, "You have only known him for a few days. It's as if you can't wait to give him the back door." "Shut up, I'm just praising others' talents." Caliban heard the sarcasm in his words. "White Ghost, I really think you should knock on his door after taking a shower. Maybe he has already taken a fancy to you." Victor's mouth still didn't stop, listening to the two people's words. Logan patted his head with a headache. "Can't you two say something nutritious? Lorna is still young." Victor was silent, and Caliban was dissatisfied. He spoke first. Lorna didn't care, but covered her mouth and laughed, because Caliban said too many words like that in the past 2 days. Soon, several people came to the middle of the farm. A square was opened up here, with firewood piled in the middle, burning with blazing flames. The orange-yellow flames looked very bright in this dark environment. Logan pushed the professor to a quiet place and stared at the scene around the fire. The children held hands and jumped around the fire, while the older ones sat in front of the barbecue stove next to the campfire, grilling the fragrant skewers. The long table on the other side was filled with all kinds of snacks and drinks that could be taken at any time, as well as beer for adults. People laughed freely beside the fire, and the orange-yellow campfire hit their faces, as if covering everyone with a bright golden halo. The children's childish laughter was like soft notes, which made the professor unable to suppress the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were full of relief. "Professor, this is what you want, right?" Macka didn't know when he appeared beside everyone, and he also looked at the warm scene illuminated by the fire with a look of fascination. "Peace, tranquility, and happiness are what I want to see in them." Charles nodded, as if he hoped that time would stop here, and they would enjoy the peace and joy that belonged to them in the shelter. Macka let out a long breath and sighed, "But it's not easy to do all this, and my goal is not just that." "Oh?" Charles looked at him in surprise, and became interested. "Can you tell me about your lofty ambitions?" Macka looked up at the bright stars in the sky. "My ideal is very simple, to make everyone no longer live in humiliation, and everyone can get the most fair treatment. We don't have to hide from place to place, and we don't have to worry about it. Every day, we can be like tonight, around the campfire, abandon all worries, and just enjoy safety and happiness." Charles looked at Macka, who was looking up at the bright starry sky, his face full of determination. A lofty ideal. Charles also sighed. Maybe I'm not in the wrong place. Logan muttered, Macka is very courageous, but these things are too far away for them. He was about to talk to Caliban and Victor, but then he realized that the two guys had already run to the long table and opened their beer to drink. The two guys who were arguing just now were now like old friends who had met after a long time, with only the beer in their eyes. The children around the campfire were having fun. When Laura found Logan, she trouser-legged and invited him to play with her. Until late at night, under the instruction of Macka, they reluctantly extinguished the bonfire and ended the party. This party seemed to be one of the few embellishments in Logan's boring escape career for more than 10 years, however, he did not find John and Klaus at the party. After asking carefully, he learned that the two were arranged by Macka to lead patrols. In the next few days, Logan never left the farm again. After all, those guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. outside might be searching for his traces all over Canada, but he was not idle either. He promised Macka to teach everyone fighting techniques and combat experience, and these courses are not mandatory. Anyone who wants to listen can come, but what he didn't expect was that as long as it was his class, it was basically full. Anyone who had time in the shelter would come, but it was normal to think about it. After all, such courses can be used by both adults and children. In addition, his story before Wolverine gradually spread in the farm, allowing many people to understand the glory of the previous X-Men and Logan's powerful strength, attracting many people who didn't like fighting. Basically, those who come to listen to the class are very serious. After all, most people in the farm have relatively useless abilities and have no combat ability. It is precisely because of this that the government has turned a blind eye to their abilities and has not deliberately rounded them up, which has allowed them to successfully escape to the shelter and survive until now, but it is also because of this that they are extremely concerned about fighting ability. After all, if they want to defend against the enemy, they have to work hard on fighting skills. Although Logan's teaching content is the same, he still focuses on training Laura and her friends. After all, they are all clones carefully selected from Rice's laboratory. They have high potential and ability, and their mutant abilities are relatively strong. As long as these people grow up, they will be the backbone of the shelter and will definitely be reserve talents, especially Laura. Although she is not very old, her strength has also made rapid progress under Logan's teaching. Perhaps because she inherited Logan's talent, she has been gifted since childhood. She is a genius in fighting. Logan only needs to explain or demonstrate many things, and the girl can understand and master them. Even Logan has repeatedly marveled at Laura's learning ability, and sometimes even boasted to himself, it's worthy of Wolverine's genes. Of course, Logan also knows that the girl's talent is not entirely due to genes, but the potential that has been forcibly developed after being tortured too much inhumanely in the laboratory since childhood. In such an environment, the talents and potential of mutants will be pushed to the extreme. While Logan and Victor are teaching fighting skills and combat experience, the professor is not idle. In addition to the usual classes, he now has to take on the task of helping the children master their mutant abilities. For some children with good mutant abilities and relatively high combat effectiveness, they will be sent to the professor, and the professor is responsible for instructing them on how to operate their abilities and enhance their own strength. Among these children, Laura and the others were all okay. Although they were not perfect in using their abilities, they were at least not too unfamiliar, but Clarice, who Logan brought back, was a little inferior to them. No, you need to concentrate, think about the address you want to teleport to, remember all the details of that place, and think carefully. Charles sat in a wheelchair and kept talking to Clarice in front of him. At this time, Clarice closed her eyes, her whole body was tense, and her palms were tearing the air in front of her, as if she was pulling open a heavy door. Waves of spatial power slowly came out, and ripples gradually appeared in the space in front of her. Yes, that's it, hold on for a while, don't open the space so quickly, and make sure of the address of the landing point. Charles looked at her encouragingly. The girl listened to these words, her brows knitted together, and beads of sweat kept dripping from her forehead. Buzz. The space door slowly opened. The girl looked at the scenery at the other end of the door and instantly collapsed. Even though she had tried very hard, the distance of this space retransmission was only more than 20 meters at most, and she couldn't even get out of the farm. Looking at the farmland behind the space crack, Clarice looked distressed and anxious. Don't worry, take your time, it's okay, it's improved compared to last time. Logan, who was watching from the side, patted her shoulder and comforted her softly. The girl looked back at Logan, nodded heavily, closed the space crack, gritted her teeth again to operate her ability, and tried to teleport herself farther. At this time, a hurried figure suddenly ran over, signaling Clarice to stop using her abilities, and said to Logan, "Logan, come on." Logan was stunned, and immediately became interested. "Can we go out?" John nodded. "McCart has contacted friends outside, there is no big danger outside, many people from S.H.I.E.L.D. have been evacuated, and we can go out now." Hearing this, Logan breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that S.H.I.E.L.D. had also encountered some troubles. He asked, "What is the mission this time?" John looked at Clarice. "McCart said it's time to go to the laboratory to take a look, while the laboratory has not been moved, and while Clarice can remember the address of the laboratory." Clarice's eyes lit up when she heard this. "I remember the address." Logan looked at her and shook his head helplessly. "Let's go." Clarice said that the laboratory where she was detained might have cooperated with the patrol team, and they must investigate this clearly. Chapter 86, Laboratory in the Old Factory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the office, Macka sat at the table with deep eyes and constant thinking. Opposite them, Logan, Lorna and others were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. After a moment of silence, Macka nodded and said, "We have to take a look at the laboratory." After finishing speaking, he said with some hesitation, "It's just that the farm is gradually full now, and the current facilities can no longer accommodate so many people. I'm afraid I won't be able to admit these people into the shelter." After a pause, he added, "But if you can rescue people, I can send them to Mexico and other shelters. I have these channels." After speaking, he looked at Logan and others and asked them to decide whether to go or not. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Logan nodded. He understood Macka's helplessness very well. Nowadays, the only source of income for the shelter is this farm. Although the profit is not small, it has to support more than 100 people in food and clothing, which is indeed a bit tight. If more people are admitted, the burden will be too great for the shelter, and it cannot be supported by the current Macka. Among the crowd, Clarice nodded without hesitation. "Yes, as long as we can save them, we'll do anything." As long as you escape from the hell like the laboratory, you can go anywhere. Macka nodded. "In that case, Logan, you are responsible for this matter. You can choose whoever you need to bring with you, and they will cooperate with you." Logan nodded without hesitation, thought for a moment and then said, "Just Victor, John, Marcus, Klaus, plus me and Clarice." The people he selected can be regarded as the backbone of the shelter, and Logan is familiar with them, making it easier to cooperate. As for Lorna, although she is also very strong, it is impossible for Logan to mobilize the defense force of the shelter. Someone must stay behind. After speaking, Logan looked at Clarice. "Do you still remember the location of the laboratory?" "Of course I remember." Clarice nodded excitedly. "Number 31 Street in North City." Although she used her teleportation ability to successfully escape the last time she escaped, after escaping from the laboratory, she deliberately remembered the location of the laboratory, although that place brought her endless fear, but now she had to go back to save her friends. The little girl showed great courage and no fear in her eyes. Beiqing District. Logan was silent for a moment, looked at the time, and said decisively, "In that case, let's set off now." Soon, all the members quickly gathered outside the farm, got in the car and headed to Beiqing District. After more than 2 hours of driving, several people arrived at Street 31 that Clarice mentioned. Because it is located in the suburbs, it seems a bit deserted here. There is no bustling city, but more factories. Most of the people coming and going are trucks, and the noise from factory operations comes and goes. There were not many people walking around on the street. Even if there were, most of them were workers in work clothes. It looked like an ordinary industrial area. Along the way, Logan couldn't help but check the guards at each level. After more than half a month, the checkpoint guards now seem much more relaxed. Compared with the last time he escaped from the city, the number of checkpoints at the city entrance has been reduced. Obviously, the last rumor has gradually dissipated, and the influence of mutants has gradually disappeared. This is it. Clarice in the back seat stuck her little head out and pointed at a factory with white smoke coming out. Victor, who was sitting in the driver's seat, slowly parked the van into a parking space near the factory. Everyone looked at the factory with some surprise on their faces. Inside this factory, Logan looked up at the billowing white smoke above the factory with a curious look on his face. Clarice nodded. I can't remember it wrong, it's in here. It seems that the owner of this factory has an extraordinary status. Victor looked at the factory gate and couldn't help but joked, it's been a long time since I saw a laboratory for studying mutants in the city. Most of the laboratories they had come into contact with before were in the suburbs, and most of them were in remote and uninhabited areas. After all, we are conducting research on mutants. If we accidentally create an uncontrollable experimental subject, it will easily have a great impact on the surrounding residents. Furthermore, human experimentation is explicitly prohibited, and all their actions must be concealed and cannot be known to the public. Therefore, for both safety and deception, many laboratories are forced to choose to locate in the suburbs. It is obviously not easy to establish a laboratory in the city. It seems that this task will be more difficult than imagined. The background of the factory or laboratory is definitely not small, but now that we have come, we cannot return without success. Let me explain the plan. Logan gathered everyone's attention and began to make a plan to infiltrate. In fact, his idea was very simple. John and Victor took Clarice outside to meet them, and he sneaked into the laboratory with Klaus and Marcus, took control of the main control room, and found the location where the mutants were imprisoned. As long as the constraints on the mutants are lifted, they will have enough power to break out of the laboratory. During this process, once they are discovered, they must solve the problem as quickly as possible. They must not be allowed any time to raise the alarm, otherwise the pickets and police from the entire city will arrive as soon as possible and directly surround the place, not to mention that they won't be able to escape by then. I'm afraid even Victor and the others who are responding outside will be discovered by the pickets. Everyone, let's get started. After Logan explained all the plans, he got into the car behind from the passenger seat. Klaus understood and held the hands of Logan and Marcus, and the three figures disappeared from the car in an instant. When John saw this, he immediately got out of the car and opened the compartment door. Logan and the other three slowly got out of the car and walked towards the factory invisibly. The guards at the factory gate are very lax. Just like many normal factories, there is only a security room at the door with a few security guards sitting inside, and these security guards were obviously not very competent. A few of them were gathered in the security room smoking cigarettes and chatting. They were completely unaware that 3 tiny footsteps had crossed the security room and successfully entered the factory. These security guards really neglected their duties. They sneaked in so easily. I thought it was like in the movies. I needed to knock them out and then put on their clothes. Klaus couldn't help but mutter under his breath. Stop talking and go this way. Logan tugged on his arm and led the 2 of them in the direction they determined. Now the 3 of them are invisible, and each other cannot see each other's status. All actions can only be done by pulling on the arms. As Logan walked, he looked at the factory. Before setting off, Clarice simply drew a blueprint for him. According to the route on the blueprint, Logan knew that the laboratory was underneath the factory, but the exit was designed to be very secretive, so he had to look for it carefully. At this time, workers in the factory are busy, and various machine tools are making noisy noises. Uniformed staff are constantly busy in front of the machine tools, producing batches of industrial parts. This is the disguise of this laboratory. If you just look at it from the outside, this is a very ordinary parts processing factory. But no one would have thought that underneath this seemingly normal factory, a bloody biological laboratory was running. Logan recalled the drawings drawn by Clarice, and after some careful exploration, he found the entrance to the underground laboratory. This is an underground passage hidden behind 2 big trees. The door is blocked by the tree trunks. If Logan hadn't read the drawings in advance, it would have taken a lot of effort to find this secret place. The entrance is not simple at first glance. It is all made of fine steel, which is very hard. There is also a special guard room and monitoring next to it. The place is heavily fortified and not even a mouse can sneak in, especially since there are surveillance cameras all around the gatekeepers. It's a pity that Logan and the others were invisible and couldn't be seen by the naked eye. They arrived at the gate right under the nose of the security guard. Marcus reached out and touched the door at the entrance, and said helplessly, "No, this door is too hard and cannot be broken open by brute force." After a pause, he added, "And I guess once this kind of door is damaged, it will sound an alarm on its own." Logan nodded. This door felt like it was on the same level as a bank vault, and it was unlikely to be destroyed by brute force. "You can swipe your card over there to enter." Klaus looked at the card machine on the side of the door. "It's just that we don't have a card." The three of them were completely in trouble. After all, they couldn't just sit here and wait for the people below to open the door and come up. "I don't know how long it will take." Just when the three of them were at a loss, there was suddenly a roar of cars behind them. Several people quickly looked back and saw a truck speeding towards them. It's the picket team's car. They are indeed cooperating with the picket team. As Logan pulled the two of them away, his eyes were fixed on the picket logo spray painted on the truck. The truck finally stopped in front of the basement door, the window rolled down, and the picket on the driver's seat waved to the security personnel, "Check, the door is open." The security personnel in the pavilion came out and carefully checked the vehicle, including the people in the driver's seat, the car chassis and even the roof. As long as they could hide people, Logan noticed that the compartment of the truck was covered with white cloth. One of the security personnel lifted the white cloth to check. There were several pickets sitting inside, guarding an iron cage in the middle. The guard only took one look and then ended the search and let him go. Marcus cursed in a low voice, "I think they are escorting mutants. These damn guys never treat mutants as human beings. Anyone who can be treated like this by several pickets and locked in such a big cage is definitely a mutant." Seeing his fellow tribesmen being imprisoned in cages, Marcus was filled with anger. "Shoo!" Logan quickly interrupted his anger and whispered, "Stop talking, be careful of being discovered." After saying that, he stared at the truck and said, "When the gate opens later, we will climb on the truck and follow the truck in." As soon as he finished speaking, a member of the picket team got out of the car and swiped his card. The heavy door slowly opened and the vehicle started. "Now," Logan quickly pulled the two of them, jumped on the running board behind the truck, grabbed the frame of the truck, and followed the truck into the basement. The basement was obviously built very deep. After driving for a while, we finally reached the special parking area. This is an empty parking lot with several trucks parked. The lights are dim. Due to the lack of sunlight for many years, the overall environment seems very cool. Logan and his companions hurriedly jumped out of the car and trotted to the side to observe. "Let's see what they are transporting first. If they are really mutants, then we don't have to look for them. Just follow them." Logan spoke in a low voice, staring at the truck at the same time. After all, this basement is not small. If you look blindly, it may take a long time. If these patrol teams are transporting mutants, it will make it easier for Logan and his companions to lock the target area. "Unload, unload." At this time, the patrol teams also got off the car and waved their hands to move things from the car. Those who unloaded the goods were all special police officers of the patrol team. There were a total of 6 people, and everyone had a rifle on their body. They worked hard to move the cage out of the car. "Damn, it's really a mutant." Marcos looked at the goods in the cage and couldn't help but clench his hands tightly, his voice full of anger. In the cage, 6 mutants sat together in a decadent and numb state, with collars on their necks. They seemed to be soulless bodies, leaning against the cage numbly, as if they had given up struggling. Damn it, this group of patrols really cooperated with the laboratory. They captured mutants to provide them to the laboratory. Damn guys. Because of anger, Marcos couldn't help but exert force with both hands. Klaus on the side couldn't help but take a breath and complained, "Don't pinch, it hurts so much." "Who's there?" However, this voice was discovered by a patrol, who was instantly alert. The gun on his back was quickly pulled in front of him, pointing in the direction of Logan and others, and spoke sternly, but fortunately, it seemed that only he accidentally heard the conversation, and the other 5 patrols all looked at him blankly. "No one, you must be hallucinating." A special police officer looked carefully at the blank area. There was not even a pillar, and no one could be hidden at all, and they didn't see anyone. "Okay, put your gun away. It's safe here. No one can get in." Another SWAT officer pushed the gun down in his hand and signaled him to put it away. The SWAT officer with the gun looked at the wall not far away with a confused look on his face, put away his rifle, and scratched his head in surprise. There's really no one here. Am I really hallucinating? I've never had this before. Stop talking nonsense. The two SWAT officers pushing the cage rolled their eyes at him. You're just tired. Just go back and have a few drinks after sending it away. This cage is specially made, and there are 2 wheels underneath, which can be easily carried. I think you're just tired and hallucinating. If you can't do it, get in the car and rest. We can send you this time. A SWAT officer patted him on the shoulder and signaled him to get in the car. It's okay, Captain. I can still move. The SWAT officer put away his gun and went to pull the cage together, but when he left, he couldn't help but glance back. He always felt that he was not hallucinating just now. In the distance, Logan and the other 2 looked at the backs of the SWAT police and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were not arrested. Logan exhaled. If a fight really broke out here, the entire basement would probably be blocked, and it would be difficult for them to escape. Hurry up and follow up, find a way to rescue the mutant. Marcos couldn't help but urge him, and then he pulled Klaus and Logan to run up with the SWAT. Clarice didn't have a blueprint of the basement. She only knew that the basement was very large, but she didn't know where the specific departments were. She couldn't even remember the location of the main control room, and she had never been there. After all, she relied on the ability of teleportation to escape the blockade step by step, and didn't stay in the laboratory for too long. She only knew that the laboratory was underground, and she didn't know more. Everything had to be found by Logan and his team. Fortunately, there were these SWAT police leading the way, which was much more convenient. Soon, Logan and his team followed the SWAT police to a freight elevator. Fortunately, the freight elevator was large enough, and after the cages were transported in, there was still room for several SWAT officers to stand in. Logan and his team looked at the empty space, gritted their teeth, and squeezed in. At this time, the SWAT officers were only 10 centimeters away from them, and they could touch them as long as they moved a little more. Logan could even clearly smell that the SWAT officer in front of him had eaten Mexican chicken rolls in the morning. At such a close distance, Logan and his team couldn't help holding their breath. Fortunately, these SWAT officers were very relaxed, chatting about trivial matters in the elevator, and occasionally saying a few dirty words, which made other SWAT officers laugh. In such a relaxed environment, they didn't notice that there were 3 special forces standing less than 10 centimeters in front of them. Boom. The elevator descended to the bottom floor, and Logan hurriedly ran out with the 3 of them. The SWAT officers also pushed the cage and walked through a long and narrow corridor, with Logan and his team following closely behind. Then, the loudspeaker in the corner suddenly issued a prompt sound, entering the scanning phase. Please do not move. After the voice fell, the special police stood straight and habitually waited for the scan. However, Logan and the others were stunned for a moment. And when they reacted and wanted to escape the scanning area, it was too late. A grid of infrared rays intertwined, like a net in the sky and the earth, scanned from all directions. As the scan ended, the display screen next to it lit up. Scanning is over, there are 15 people in total, welcome in. An ethereal voice came from the loudspeaker, and the scanned images of 15 people appeared on the screen. The door at the end of the corridor also slowly opened, revealing bursts of light. 15 people. Listening to the voice in the loudspeaker, the special police was stunned for a moment, looked at the image on the screen, and then looked at the few of them. In an instant, the face seemed to see a ghost and became flustered at a speed visible to the naked eye. No, including the guys in the cage, there are only 12 of us in total. That he shouted loudly, took the rifle behind him in his hand, and looked around vigilantly. The other 5 people also felt creepy, their faces turned pale in fear, raised their guns, and leaned their backs tightly against the cage. Chapter 87 Evidence of Crime, Mutant Crematorium. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Search TWKAN on Google.in. The corridor, all the special police officers were holding guns in a panic, leaning against the iron cage and looking left and right with vigilant faces, but there was nothing around, and they didn't know which direction to aim at. Hell, use our infrared scanning equipment, that the captain ordered with a frown. A team member decisively took out a mobile phone-sized instrument from his waist and carefully scanned the surrounding area. However, after scanning them all, the team member looked puzzled and said, "Captain, there are only a few of us, there are no extra people." Among his equipment were the 6 SWAT officers surrounding them outside the cage, and the 6 mutants locked inside the cage. The captain took the instrument over and checked it carefully. His nervousness instantly dissipated. He threw the infrared scanning device back, glanced at the scanner on the edge of the corridor, and couldn't help but roll his eyes. Damn it, couldn't they just change it to another machine? They are still using this old thing from the last century. I'm scared to death. Obviously, he thought this was a malfunction in the laboratory's scanner. After all, many things in this laboratory were around older than them, so it was normal for them to have problems from time to time. Cancel the alert, continue delivering goods, finish it quickly and go back. The captain grumbled and signaled his men to continue pushing the cage and set off. Outside the corridor, the 3 Logans clung to the wall, listening to the conversation of the special police officers in the distance, and couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Just now, when the special police officers were panicking, they immediately ran out against the wall. After all, that was not a good place to start a fight. If a fight broke out, the gunshots would spread throughout the laboratory and the alarm would sound immediately. Once that step is reached, the special police from the picket team will rush to surround sitting in the underground laboratory as soon as possible. The difficulty of escape will be greatly increased. Logan and the others may even be trapped and die in the laboratory. Therefore, Logan and the others do not want to have any conflicts unless necessary. A bunch of idiots. Klaus couldn't help but complain as he watched the group of SWAT officers return to their normal state and continue chatting about trivial matters. Shoo. Logan blew out a breath softly. Don't talk yet. After saying that, he turned his head and looked towards the end of the corridor. This is the hall of the laboratory, which is very spacious. If the decoration staff did not deliberately create a nostalgic style, then it means that this laboratory is a product passed down from the last century to the present. Under the dim light, there are various huge cabinet-like instruments. There are many test tubes and experimental solutions of various colors on the table, as well as microscopes and incubators, which are common in laboratories. However, without exception, these things look more like antiques. Some staff members wearing white dust-free suits stood by the instrument, looking at the data on the instrument and recording it in the notebooks in their hands. In addition, the hall is connected to many corridors leading to various specialized laboratories. At this time, the special police came out pushing the cage. Almost at the same time, several staff members wearing dust-free suits also walked out of the corridor on the other side. We'll leave it here. The captain of the special police waved to them and motioned for the staff to come and meet them. There are 6 in this batch, 2 small ones and 4 big ones. They all have no external injuries. Take a look. Captain pointed to the mutants held in cages. A staff member took a small flashlight and looked into the cage. After checking, he nodded, took the list handed over by the captain and signed his name. Okay, they'll leave it to you. The captain looked at the signatures on the list and smiled, then led the team away. The staff took over the cage with ease and pushed it into a passage. The process was very skillful, and it was obvious that this was not the first time they had done this. Logan looked at the backs of the staff, thought for a moment, and said softly, "Follow me, maybe you can find the holding area." Their main purpose is to free the mutants, and finding the holding area is the top priority. After saying that, the 3 of them quietly followed the staff up, but just after walking a few steps, Klaus next to him suddenly said, "Look, the main control room is here." Logan looked up and saw the door number of the main control room in front. The door was closed tightly at this time, and he didn't know what was going on inside. Logan stared at the door of the main control room, pondered for a moment and then said, "I will go to control the main control room. You continue to follow these staff members. Everything will go according to plan." The main control room controls the suppression collars of all mutants and the conditions of the entire laboratory cell door. If the main control room cannot be controlled, the cells where mutants are held and the restraining collars cannot be opened, then even finding the cells where mutants are held will be in vain. Klaus and Marcus nodded. At the same time, Logan felt a hard object being stuffed into his palm. Then Klaus said, "The virus program has been written in this USB disk. Just insert it into the main control. The computer in the room can take over any authority. As long as they decipher the computer's various permission defenses, they can control the entire prison through the computer." Logan nodded, put away the USB flash drive, and let go of Klaus's hand. In an instant, his figure appeared in the corridor. When no one was paying attention, Logan rolled and hid at the corner of the corridor. "Be careful yourself." Klaus's voice came to Logan's ear, "We will tell you after we find the location of the cell." Logan nodded to the source of the sound and carefully checked the surroundings. Because it was working hours, everyone was busy conducting various experiments in the laboratory. The corridor was very empty. There were only the backs of the staff transporting mutants in front. They didn't notice Logan, who suddenly appeared in the distance behind them. Logan stared at the door of the main control room, thought for a while, ran to the door quickly and pushed it open. The huge main control room was full of various computers and monitoring screens. It can be said that all the electronic components of the entire laboratory were controlled here. At this time, there were only 3 people in the main control room. After hearing the sound of the door opening, all 3 of them looked at him in unison. Logan looked at the 3 people and froze in place for a while. The muscles under his clothes slowly tightened, and the steel claws between his fingers were about to come out. Fuck. He was about to roar and finish off the 3 people, but one of them suddenly interrupted and said, "Hey, you are always so slow. I have already reported the problem for several days, and you are just here now." Logan was stunned and stared at the person who was speaking in astonishment. The other 2 withdrew their gazes with a calm expression and continued to play with their mobile phones, as if they were not surprised at all by Logan's arrival. "Why are you still standing at the door? Unit 3, go quickly, it has been broken for 3 days, you can't always expect it to fix itself." The person who spoke earlier urged again, seeming to be very unhappy with Logan's speed. Logan understood instantly, and it was obvious that the other party regarded him as a maintenance worker. He nodded quickly and said, "Okay, I'll be right there." After that, he closed the door and rushed to Unit 3 in the direction of the staff's finger. Logan tried to press the power button, while carefully looking at the 3 people who were playing with their mobile phones and chatting not far away. One of them complained while playing with his phone, "Take a good look at it. This number 3 machine always breaks down. I applied for a new one from the higher-ups, but the finance department has been dragging their feet. It's not his money. I don't know why he's dragging it out for so long." Logan nodded. The computer had already been turned on normally. It looked fine. Logan couldn't help asking, "It can be turned on and there's nothing wrong with it?" "Yes, it can be turned on." Another person said impatiently, "But the program can't be opened. It's just a glowing screen now." "Oh." Logan he randomly clicked the mouse twice, and then said in a serious tone, "Maybe the computer is infected with a virus." "Virus? Our firewalls are very advanced." The person who first spoke to Logan spoke. He came close to Logan, frowned and asked, "Can it be fixed? We will need some files in this computer in the future. Many viruses can ignore firewalls." Logan shrugged and said with a smile, "But don't worry, it can be fixed, it will be done soon." After that, he took out the USB flash drive prepared by Klaus from his pocket and inserted it into the computer. As the USB flash drive was connected to the computer, a command window popped up on the screen instantly, and a loading signal was displayed on it. 2%, 5%, 8%. "What is this?" The staff came in curiously and stared at the loading signal on the screen. Logan was very calm. He pointed at the USB drive and said calmly, "This is an antivirus program I wrote myself. As long as it runs to completion, 99% of viruses can be eliminated by it. Basically, as long as the computer is infected with a virus, this thing can solve it." He talked nonsense without blushing or beating his heart, and the staff beside him nodded in approval. "It seems that your technical department is still quite capable." He patted Logan on the shoulder and turned back to his seat. "Tell us when it's done." After speaking, he picked up the teacup on the table, lay on his back on the chair, raised his feet and put them on the table, looked at his companions in a very comfortable way, and chatted with them. Logan looked at the appearance of the three people and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but feel lucky that he had met three idiots, otherwise there might be some trouble. He put his eyes back on the computer screen. At this time, the progress bar was continuing to grow, and it should take about 3 minutes to successfully complete the decryption. While waiting for the progress bar, Logan was thinking about how to deal with the three idiots behind him. After all, these three idiots are also staff members in the main control room. Even if they don't know about antivirus programs, they definitely know how to control the computer. If I openly release all the mutants under their noses and turn on the control of the suppression collar, the three of them will definitely find out. Once they press the alarm, it will be troublesome, so I have to find a way to knock them out to be safer. While thinking, the chat between the three people came into Logan's ears, and the content of the chat made Logan a little stunned, and his brows couldn't help but frown. If I remember correctly, it seems that a few more mutants will be sent here today. The man lying on the chair turned his head and looked at his two companions. This is already the third batch this month. It seems that their experiments have reached a critical juncture. Send them here, those guys deserve to die. They are all monsters with genetic mutations. They should not appear in this world. If they can make some contributions to society before they die, it can be considered a worthy death. The man who had been immersed in his cell phone responded with a look of disgust, seeming to hate mutants deeply. Another person put down the magazine in his hand and said with interest, I was watching the news before, and it was said that these mutants are about to become extinct. I thought they had become an endangered species long ago, but I didn't expect that there are so many left. Actually, most of them escaped from the laboratory. Those guys always want to go out and kill people. They are simply a cancer in society. They are originally abnormal products. Most of them have brain problems. I think their ancestors were the result of crossbreeding with animals. They are all beasts. You are right. I think the government should issue a law so that citizens can shoot and kill mutants for fun whenever they are found. In this case, I believe we will definitely see the last protected mutant in the zoo. Then the scientists in the laboratory are still not allowed to hold signs and go to the streets to protest. We still need those guys as test subjects in the laboratory. Actually, it's almost the same. Dozens of guys are thrown into the incinerator in the laboratory every day, and some worthless ones are also thrown in and burned alive. At this rate, I think their extinction is not far away. After all, there are actually many laboratories like ours. By the way, has the burning speed in our laboratory become faster recently? I can always hear screams coming from the crematorium recently, which I could only hear once in a long time. It seems that the experiment has reached a critical part. The scientists are busy and have no time to euthanize them. If they have no use value, they will be thrown in and burned. It seems like the guys in the crematorium are going to be exhausted. Burning living things is more troublesome than burning dead things. What's there to be tired of? It's all thrown into the stove, just turn on the switch. It's different. The living ones will struggle, and the burned ashes are everywhere. It's troublesome to sweep them up. But the dead ones are much easier. They're all on the cremation table. Just sweep them up casually. The three of them looked at each other and chatted with each other, as if the execution of mutants was their entertainment after tea. We even talked about how a mutant mother and son were burned together yesterday. The child struggled in the furnace, and the mother broke free and rushed into the furnace to rescue her, but she was burned to ashes. The three of them laughed without any humanity at all, but instead ridiculed the mother's stupidity. Damn it, Logan's face was so gloomy that it seemed to be dripping with water, and the anger in his eyes could no longer be contained. He originally just wanted to knock these three people out, but now it seems that what they need is not to faint, but to see God in person and repent for the faults in their hearts. The staff member not far away heard his voice, stopped chatting, got up and walked over, asking worriedly, "What's wrong, are you in trouble?" "No." Logan turned his back to him and shook his head. However, the next second, a cold light suddenly flashed in front of the staff member's eyes. Whoops. By the time he reacted, Logan's fist was already on his neck, and the steel claw easily penetrated his neck. causing blood to spurt out. Logan stared at him. "You are in trouble." After saying that, he pulled out the steel claw fiercely, and hot blood spurted out. The staff member subconsciously covered his neck, his face was pale, and blood continued to flow from the corners of his mouth. He staggered back 2 steps, looked at Logan in disbelief, and finally collapsed completely. The blood instantly dyed the ground red. The other 2 staff members were stunned by the sudden change. "Fark! Are you a mutant? Quick, sound the alarm." When the 2 of them reacted and went to raise the alarm, Logan swooped up like a hunting wolf, stabbing one person to death with each hand on his left and right hands. The sharp steel claws easily cut open their chests, and the bodies were split into 2. Fell down heavily, and blood flowed all over the floor along with his internal organs and intestines. "Call." Logan exhaled slowly, and the anger in his eyes also slowed down as the 3 people fell. He stared at the 3 corpses on the ground and shook his head in disgust. He didn't want to kill anyone, but these 3 people had no humanity at all. Perhaps some of their mutants do retain some animalistic features, such as eyes or ears, or like his wolf claws, but at most they only have traces of beasts on their bodies, but deep down they are still humans. But these guys who call themselves humans have turned into beasts from the bottom of their hearts. The compassion and sympathy that humans should have been innocently abandoned by them. Kong has the body of a human, but the heart of an animal. He put away the steel claw and looked at the screen. At this time, the USB disk had been cracked, and now he could control the entire laboratory. Logan quickly ran to the computer and opened the laboratory layout. At this time, the voices of John and Klaus sounded from the portable headset on his ears. Klaus whispered, "Logan, how is the situation over there?" "We have arrived at the holding room, and there are many mutants here. The guards are changing shifts now, and there aren't many people there. It's a good time to open the cells." John also added in a low voice. Logan nodded. "Wait, I'll be fine." After speaking, Logan froze the surveillance screen so that the surveillance could not record these messages, then opened the door to the holding room and released all suppressors. Next, just wait for the news about John and the others retreating together. When exiting the program, Logan suddenly noticed a log on the computer desktop, Crematorium work log. Logan looked at the file name and was stunned. He couldn't help but click to check. 015, today, the patrol team sent another batch of mutants. I thought it might take a long time before they got their turn, but then the laboratory sent 2 of them and said they were useless and asked us to burn them quickly. 016, we burned 30 today, breaking the record, almost the amount we burned in a week before. One of them woke up in the middle because the sedative was too little. I was scared to death. Fortunately, there was no problem. But we found that it seems that it is okay not to use sedatives, which can save a lot of expenses. Anyway, their final result is just a ball of ash. 017, it's so noisy. Those disgusting guys, couldn't they just hold back when they were burned? They had to struggle in the crematorium. I'm going to have tinnitus all day long. Looking at these contents, Logan's face became completely gloomy. Hundreds of logs, each of which was short, but the content was completely devoid of humanity. Logan couldn't help but clench his fists, making a series of creaking sounds, and pounded the table hard, and a corner of the table instantly broke. None of these guys in the lab are good. He gritted his teeth and muttered angrily, and then saved the log into a USB drive. These are all evidence of these guys' crimes. Chapter 89 Extreme Killing, Prestige Soars. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The anger in his heart could no longer be contained, and his strong body could not stop shaking because of anger. Logan looked at the guards who were quickly chasing him with a cold expression, murderous intent on his face. His eyes were gradually filled with red light, and an unimaginable and terrifying high temperature was gradually rising. Search TWKAN on Google. Quick, he's right there. The guards at the rear were still chasing after him. After seeing Logan's figure, they quickly called for the large troops to rush forward together, but as he got closer, he discovered the red pupils in Logan's eyes. A pair of eyes that seemed to be stained with blood made him look like a demon who had just walked out of hell. Scanned by those red eyes, the guard felt as if the hairs all over his body were standing on end, as if countless invisible steel needles were pricking his body. And he suddenly felt horrified, the fear in his heart made him unable to control his legs. His legs and feet gradually trembled. He did not dare to get closer. He only dared to stay 10 meters away from Logan and looked at him with trembling fear. The surrounding temperature has risen sharply, and the cold air blown from the central air conditioner can no longer stop the spread of heat. The huge laboratory is shrouded in this high temperature, as if it is in a desert. The guard looked back at his teammates behind him. The army of hundreds of guards gave him great encouragement. He suppressed the fear in his heart and tried his best to keep his hand holding the gun from shaking. "Boy, if you are wise, hurry up and arrest him, otherwise we will not be polite." That he looked at Logan and squeezed out these words through gritted teeth, making himself look confident. Boom. What responded to him were two terrifying red beams. The dazzling light seemed to dye the entire corridor with a strange red color. The air evaporated by the beam instantly rose into thick mist. The guard's head was accurately hit by the beam, and the entire head was directly exploded by this terrifying attack. The minced meat and brains flew out with the skull, sprinkling the faces of the soldiers behind him. Blood instantly splashed from the exploded neck, like a fountain of blood, spreading all over the ground. The headless corpse fell down stiffly with a loud bang. Its fingers trembled convulsively twice, and then completely stopped moving. Fake. When the guard behind him saw this scene, his scalp almost split with fright, and his hands couldn't stop shaking. Feeling the blood being splashed on his body, he was stunned for a moment. The fear in his heart gradually increased. Looking at Logan in the distance, his heart almost stopped. Fuck, damn, fire. Suddenly, a guard held up his rifle despite his fear and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Only then did the other guards react suddenly, hurriedly raised their guns and started shooting together. Bang bang bang. The sound of intensive gunfire was endless, the hot shells being thrown out of the bomb bay jingled, and the muzzle of the gun kept spraying flames. Under the flames, bullets flew one after another to form a dense barrage net, like a heavy rain pouring down towards Luo. The roots pour away. The bullet hit Logan's body, and the hot warhead instantly exploded the surface of Logan's flesh and penetrated crazily into the muscles. The blood mist continued to disperse from Logan's body, and the hot blood filled his eyes like mist. In just a moment, Logan's body was completely smashed by bullets. There was no good piece of meat at all. In some places, the silver Edelman alloy skeleton could even be seen under the clean flesh. The pain that shot through his body made Logan couldn't help but groan. Although the self-healing factor can ensure his immortality, it cannot help him block the pain in his body. The pain of every cell being crushed can be clearly fed back to his brain. Now he is just enduring the pain of Ling Chi, but even so, he gritted his teeth and allowed the bullets to wash away his body. The next second, blazing light burst out from his eyes again, like two blazing fire dragons flying out of the magma, roaring and sweeping out. The blazing fire dragon was like a life-threatening scythe, mercilessly sweeping in front of the eyes and ruthlessly penetrating the guard's body. Part of the body was directly burned into a ball of black coke the moment it came into contact with the blazing fire dragon. Under the erosion of the laser, the black coke turned into ashes. Without the support of his waist, the guard's upper body fell heavily to the ground, and his internal organs and blood spurted out from the fracture, flowing all over the floor. His upper body, which was not completely dead, could clearly see his lower limbs being hit hard on his head. He was crawling on the ground with his hands in fear, and his intestines and internal organs were dragged out with a horrific bloodstain, while his mouth kept wailing in fear. Perhaps at this time, they could also feel the final feelings of those mutants wailing in the incinerator. As the red fire dragon swept across, all the guards were cut off. Some were groping and crawling on the ground with tenacious vitality, while others died directly. The internal organs and intestines were scattered all over the floor, blood was flowing like a small stream, and the wailing sound echoed throughout the laboratory. Some people tried their best to crazily stuff the fallen intestines and internal organs into their chests, as if they could survive if they were stuffed in. But the blood-stained intestines and internal organs were extremely smooth. Every inch he stuffed in, another half-inch flowed out. In this process, his life gradually came to an end and he collapsed heavily. The huge movement here attracted more guards from outside to rush in. But as soon as they stepped into the corridor, they were greeted by the endless heat vision. the red high-temperature dragon swept across all the guards indiscriminately, and the incomparable terrifying power instantly blew apart parts of the guards' bodies. The parts that came into contact with the heat line of sight were instantly carbonized, and the pieces of meat that were near the heat line of sight were quickly cooked and split from the body. Bang bang bang. The bodies fell one after another, completely without any ability to resist. Logan strode towards the guards, like a killing god, chasing those guards who wanted to escape. At this moment, the offense and defense changed. All the guards looked at this extremely tragic scene, and even forgot to resist, and turned around and ran. But how could Logan give up on them? The fire dragon sprayed from his eyes was like a sickle that harvested lives. With every cut, these guards fell down like weeds in the field. In just a few minutes, the entire corridor was covered with sticky blood and body fragments. The guards' internal organs were intertwined and their intestines were fused together, making it impossible to distinguish them from each other. The spurting blood almost dyed the entire corridor red, and the blood spots on the wall were like undried paint, constantly dripping down. As the last guard fell, Logan reached out to wipe off the sticky blood on his face, but the more he wiped, the thicker it became. This blood mixed with minced meat exuded a strong fishy smell and covered his entire face. He turned his head and looked around. The white smoke from the corners of his eyes gradually dissipated, and the hot temperature continuously emitted from his eye sockets made him feel that his eyes were very dry, and bloodshot continued to spread in his pupils, which looked extremely terrifying. He took a deep breath, and the air was full of the fishy smell of blood, mixed with the smell of many pieces of burnt meat, which was like a horrible scene that would only appear in hell. But obviously, he would not give up. Those damn beasts must pay with their lives today. He strode toward the hall outside, his heavy footsteps on the sticky blood, the soles of his shoes mixed with the blood, making a creaking sound. Tap, tap, tap. The heavy footsteps sounded like knocks from hell. The guards surrounding the outside were more like survivors at this time, swallowing their saliva constantly, staring at the door with their guns raised. Because of the obstruction of the door, they could not clearly see what happened in the corridor, but the shrill wailing just now was clearly heard, and the howlings were like those from hell, which made the hearts of the guards jump into a straight line, and their faces were full of fear. Creak. The door was slowly opened, and Logan, covered in blood, walked out slowly from behind the door like a messenger from hell. His feet stepped on the ground and left two extremely clear bloody footprints, and the dripping blood slowly extended out like a line. The guards looked at Logan, and their pupils shrank suddenly. The pair of cold, murderous eyes made everyone feel as if they were in the abyss, and their hearts were in uncontrollable panic. At this time, someone noticed the tragic scene. Behind the door, the corridor was full of blood and minced meat. Intestines and internal organs kept wriggling in the blood. There was not a single good corpse, all were broken into pieces. Shoot, this is a demon, shoot. That the horrifying scene made all the guards feel their brains buzzing and exploded. One of them roared in panic. The next moment, everyone pulled the trigger. Bang bang bang. The fierce gunshots filled the entire laboratory again, and countless bullets were all swept towards Logan, but Logan did not dodge at all, letting the bullets wash his body, and his steps were still very firm and slowly approaching them. Seeing Logan approaching with bullets, the guards were completely terrified. They stared at Logan blankly. After emptying the magazine in the gun, everyone was completely stunned and even forgot to change the magazine. He is not a human, but a demon. One person trembled, his lips trembled, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Click. Suddenly, someone threw his gun away and turned around to run without hesitation. His legs trembling with fear made him stagger when he ran, but even so, he did not dare to stay here for long, and his escape was like a wake-up call to everyone's inner shock. They looked at Logan with pale faces, and completely realized the consequences of not running. They ran like crazy. Some people fell down accidentally because of the shock, but they did not dare to get up. They crawled away from here on all fours like primitive animals. Logan looked at the panicked guards, without any emotion in his eyes. Ding dang. The bullets on the body were squeezed out by the muscles and fell to the ground with a clang. At the same time, the red light in the eyes bloomed again, and the terrifying high temperature attacked again. Whoosh. The red heat vision was like a giant dragon, sweeping out without mercy. With just one sweep, all the guards who were fleeing frantically were completely cut off. Weak places such as arms exploded instantly, and blood mist rose in the heat vision. Places such as the chest were instantly scorched and fell heavily to the ground, with blood and minced meat mixed together. The smell of blood and burnt odor filled the air, and the gushing blood dyed the entire hall red. Some guards who did not die immediately fell to the ground and looked at their broken bodies, wailing in despair, and finally gradually stopped moving. Seeing this, several staff members in white coats curled up in the corner were completely frightened. When they looked back and saw Logan looking directly at them, their hearts almost stopped, and their bodies kept leaning back, tightly against the wall. After watching Logan stride towards them, his face turned pale in fear, and he shook his head with a trembling voice, wailing in fear, "Don't kill me, I'm not a threat, please, I don't want to die. I'm useful, I'm important to them, you hijacked me, the pickets outside dare not attack you. Please, I have children at home, they can't live without me." This group of scientists who usually ignore life, at the moment before dying, finally felt the state of mind of the mutants they used for experiments. The fear of death continued to spread in their hearts, every cell in their bodies was wailing, and their bodies couldn't stop shaking. "Save these words for Satan," Logan spoke coldly, and the next moment, his eyes flashed red, and his hot eyes swept out, bang bang bang. The heads of the 6 scientists exploded instantly, blood spurted out, and the white coats were completely dyed red. Their bodies completely collapsed to the ground, and their limbs kept twitching. Seeing this, several staff members on the other side went completely crazy, let out a sharp roar, and turned to run away. "Satan, this is Satan. The devil is killing people, run, the world is coming to an end. Run." Logan looked sideways, and these noisy voices made him upset, and he said in annoyance, "It's so noisy, shut up." As the voice fell, the thermal vision swept out like a dragon, and the bodies of those people were directly split in half, fell heavily to the ground, and closed their mouths forever. Who? After doing this, Logan retracted the thermal vision, took a long breath, closed his dry eyes, and rubbed his eyebrows. Using the thermal vision for a long time made his eyes extremely sore. Bang. At this moment, there was a crisp sound behind him. Logan was stunned, looked back, and found that it was a guard lying in a pool of blood. He had escaped by luck before, and now he wanted to escape while Logan closed his eyes to rest, but God didn't help him. He stepped on the slippery blood and fell heavily to the ground. "Is there anyone else?" Logan muttered in annoyance, turned and walked towards the guard. The guard in the pool of blood looked at Logan, who was covered in blood and looked like a god of death. The fear in his heart could no longer be contained. Tears splashed, and he pulled out his pistol in a panic and kept shooting at Logan. However, perhaps his hands were shaking so much because of fear that he couldn't hit Logan at all. Until all the bullets in the magazine were used up, he couldn't even touch Logan's skin. Seeing that Logan was still pressing forward, he kept rubbing back and subconsciously smashed the pistol at Logan. The pistol hit Logan's chest, limp, and then fell to the ground, and was stepped on by Logan into a pile of scrap metal. "Devil, you damn devil, you will go to hell sooner or later." The guard knew that he could not escape death, and he trembled and glared at Logan, gritting his teeth and roaring. "Wait for me in hell first, Satan has an appointment with you." Logan snorted coldly, and the next moment, the violent dragon flew out again, piercing the guard's mouth. His head exploded directly, and his body fell to the ground, completely motionless. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Logan said in a deep voice, "You are lucky. These guys, when torturing mutants, simply do everything they can. It is already very friendly to solve them so easily." After solving this guard, Logan looked up at the surveillance camera on the wall and ignored it. He had already frozen all the camera images in the main control room, and now everything he did could not be recorded by the camera. "Logan!" At this time, Marcus's shout came. Logan quickly put away the red light in his eyes, touched his burning eyes, and felt the blue veins on his forehead. Then, Marcus pushed the door open anxiously. "Logan, are you okay?" As soon as he finished speaking, he noticed the corpses and bloody scenes on the ground, and he couldn't say anything anymore. He looked at Logan in disbelief. You killed them all." He stood in the pool of blood in the hall, and the corpses on the ground were like a mass grave, lying quietly in the hall. Logan, covered in blood, stood there calmly and indifferently. Behind Marcus, Klaus and a group of mutants followed closely and rushed in. In an instant, everyone was frightened to the point of numbness. Oh my God, so many guards, all dead. And these damn scientists, also dead. That guy did all this? Who is he? This is too scary. Is this really something a human can do? All the red people couldn't help but mutter. They were imprisoned by these guards, so they naturally knew how powerful these guys were. Although these guys were inhumane, their strength was indeed unquestionable. However, now they were all wiped out by this person. For a moment, everyone looked at Logan with shock in their eyes. Prestige plus 10, prestige plus 10, prestige plus 10. Feeling the increase in prestige, Logan did not show too many complicated expressions, but just nodded indifferently, took out the USB flash drive he had been guarding tightly and threw it out. After you have seen these, you will understand why I did this. The video files in the USB drive, let alone mutants, even ordinary normal humans with a little conscience will feel extremely angry. Logan does not regret killing, but regrets that they have not been tortured accordingly. Marcus swallowed his saliva, looked at the blood-stained USB drive, nodded and said, "Let's go out first. There is a patrol team at the main gate and we can't go, let's go to the back door to gather." Logan nodded, took a deep breath, and walked in one direction. "Follow me, through the corridor is the exit of the back door." After that, he pushed open the door of the corridor and walked in. But as soon as they entered the corridor, everyone was instantly frightened by the horrific scene in the corridor. There were corpses everywhere, and the body parts and broken bones and meat were mixed together, emitting bursts of stench. The intestines and internal organs on the ground were intertwined together, which looked as horrible as a slaughterhouse. The sticky blood made people feel the stickiness from the soles of their feet every step. Everyone looked at this shocking scene and suddenly raised their heads to look at Logan, who was walking in the front. Everyone realized that this was done by Logan. In an instant, everyone's mind was completely blank, and only one sentence kept circulating. "This guy is definitely a killer from hell." Prestige plus 10, prestige plus 10, prestige plus 10. Chapter 90. Back to the top, perfect self-healing factor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Logan and his team successfully escaped from the back door. At this time, the guys from the patrol team had not yet formed a circle, and they did not encounter any obstacles along the way. On the street at the back door, Victor and his team had already been waiting here, and there were also 2 temporary second-hand cars. This was what Victor and John hurriedly bought from a nearby car dealership after Klaus reported the number of detained mutants in the communicator. After all, the car they originally drove could not accommodate so many people. Marcos and others urged the mutants to get in the car, and then the convoy drove away from the factory quickly, almost brushing past the police car that came to support. But fortunately, there were no dangers along the way. They successfully escaped from here before the city was blocked. Logan sat in the co-pilot seat, and Marcos was driving next to him. The two watched the convoy successfully drive out of the checkpoint, and then they breathed a sigh of relief. "Uncle Wolf, wipe the blood off your face." In the back seat, Clarice handed Logan a tissue sensibly. "Well, thank you." Logan took the tissue and nodded, opened a water bottle, dipped it in a little water, and slowly wiped the blood off his face. After a while, the whole paper turned red, mixed with a lot of skin tissues of unknown people, and some tiny pieces of flesh could be found in the hair. After using several pieces of paper in a row, the bloody face was finally wiped clean. "Thank you." Clarice looked at the tissues stained with scarlet blood, knowing that Logan's journey was not easy, and he must have made it through the killing. She looked at Logan and said sincerely gratefully, "I also thank you on behalf of everyone. Without you, they might not be able to leave the laboratory." Logan smiled and shook his head. "Don't be so polite, we are all the same kind, and before I die of old age, I should contribute a little to my kind." At this time, Marcos, who had already driven the car into a small road, suddenly said, "How did you do it?" That while speaking, he glanced at Logan, his eyes full of awe. The horrific scene in the laboratory just now would give people nightmares. It is hard to imagine how Logan killed so many guards with his own strength. After reading the contents of the USB drive, you will have the same idea as me. Logan let out a long breath and couldn't help kneading his eyebrows. His eyes were still sore from time to time. Killing so many people at once is not just a matter of being angry or not. You can't do it without courage. Marcus looked at Logan and spoke slowly. Although he hadn't seen the video yet, it was not difficult to see from Logan's reaction that the content in the video must be shocking. Logan was silent. Indeed, it was impossible to kill so shockingly without courage. It's just that Wolverine was bloodthirsty on the battlefield before, and he could be called a killing machine. Over the years, countless souls died under his claws, but he thought that this time was different from the previous killings. This time, the massacre in the laboratory was not just killing, not to vent the bloodthirsty beast, but real anger. He was old and no longer had the bloodthirstiness he had in the past. If possible, he didn't even want to kill people easily, but the files in the video and the logs of the crematorium made his long silent heart re-emerge with a bloodthirsty nature, and all of this was caused by the guards and scientists themselves. If they were not so cruel and retained some humanity towards mutants, Logan would not be so angry. At most, he would save people and run away, but it was their cruelty that made Logan almost lose his mind and commit this murder. I'm sleepy. Let me sleep for a while. Call me when we get to the farm. Logan sighed tiredly, slowly closed his eyes and leaned back in the chair. The continuous use of his abilities just now was too much for him. Now his eyes were full of soreness and his whole body was filled with fatigue. He urgently needed to rest for a while. However, just as he closed his eyes, Marcus said, "We won't go to the farm. With so many people, we will be too conspicuous. Macka is worried that the location of the farm will be leaked, so he plans to send people directly to other shelters." Logan nodded in understanding. Indeed, more than 40 people are too conspicuous and can be easily discovered. It is more appropriate to transfer people directly to other shelters. Whatever. Logan closed his eyes and lay comfortably on the chair. Call me when you arrive. Marcus stopped talking, and Clarice and other mutants behind him fell silent after hearing this, letting Logan have a good rest. About an hour later, the vehicle stopped, and Marcus shook Logan and woke him up. "Logan, we are here." Logan opened his eyes and looked around blankly. This is a jungle, surrounded by large trees that cover the sky and the sun, and it is very cool to stand under the trees. Macka is waiting for us in front. Marcus pointed to the front, then pushed the door and got out of the car. Under a tree not far away, Macka also walked out slowly, looking at everyone with a smile on his face. There were a few unfamiliar faces beside him, probably people from other shelters. Logan followed the crowd and walked up to Macka. It seems there are quite a few people. Macka looked at the 43 mutants behind Logan and nodded with a smile. "Logan, thank you for your contribution to rescuing mutants. You are the first to contribute in this operation." He just had a phone call with Klaus and learned all about the operation, and also learned about Logan facing hundreds of guards alone. We also learned about his killing spree in the laboratory. So many people died in that laboratory at one time, and the storage room where the information was stored was destroyed. It can basically be declared that the laboratory is completely dead. After all, after such a big thing happened, I'm afraid no one would want to work in that laboratory anymore. Logan smiled and nodded. These are what I should do, and this time we have a lot of information about the cooperation of the group of people with the pickets, as well as the inhumane experiments in the laboratory. If spread, these laboratories can make everyone angry in an instant. This is also the reason why he copied the diaries and videos. The crimes committed by these laboratories are too bad. If they are deliberately spread, it will definitely cause repercussions. By then, the public's attitude towards mutants may also change, and they understand that mutant talents they are truly disadvantaged groups. Of course, if you want to change the public's views on mutants, these videos alone may not be enough, and more intelligence may need to be collected in the future. Macka smiled. "Anyway, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the mutants. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to save so many people this time. You are really strong. Thank you very much for your help." After speaking, he looked at the group of mutants behind Logan. "Everyone, congratulations on regaining your freedom. I will arrange for someone to send you to a safe shelter, where you no longer have to worry about danger and can live happily and safely." When the voice fell, these mutants couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and some even cried with joy. They expressed their gratitude to Logan, Macka and others, with their faces full of excitement of being out of the sea of suffering. After Macka finished speaking, he asked the unfamiliar faces around him to start preparing to transport these mutants. Clarice said a simple goodbye to her friends in the laboratory. Although they were a little reluctant to part with each other, they also understood that they were lucky to escape from the laboratory now and did not dare to ask for too much. As those unfamiliar faces moved the 43 mutants, only a few people from the farm were left in the woods. "It's finally over, you can go back and rest." Victor looked at the cars speeding away and couldn't help stretching, his bones creaking. During today's rescue mission, he only responded on the ground and sat in the car almost the whole time. It seemed relaxed, but in fact it was very uncomfortable. Indeed, today is tiring enough. Logan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, his eyes full of fatigue. "I heard that you killed all those guys in the laboratory." Victor looked at Logan with a surprised expression. When they were in the car just now, Klaus vividly told Victor the scene he saw and the tragic situation of hundreds of guards. This made Victor a little surprised. After all, Logan had never been a person who liked killing. His mentality has changed as he got older, and he rarely took the initiative to kill easily, but the scene in the laboratory was nothing short of a massacre, and it was hard for Victor to believe that it was written by Logan. "It's just a casual thing. If you watched those videos, you would do the same thing." Logan shrugged nonchalantly. Anyone who watches that video will probably be like him, unable to control the anger in his heart. "It seems the real Wolverine is coming back soon." Victor smiled at Logan, knowing that this was probably the first step in Logan's rise, and that his former majesty might soon be repeated on him. Cough cough cough. As soon as Victor finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed, and he coughed violently, making his face turn red. Seeing this, Logan quickly stepped forward and patted him on the back, and asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" "Ahem." Victor coughed, waved his hands, and said with a wry smile, "It's normal for people to cough when they are old." After saying that, he got a certain reply, walked into the car with a smile, and prepared to return to the farm. Logan looked at Victor's back, feeling a little dazed for a moment. That back view can no longer be compared with the all-powerful saber-toothed tiger of World War II. Sometimes when he looked at it, Logan felt that he was an old, middle-aged man, but there is nothing that can be done about it. When a person reaches a certain age, body functions inevitably decline. Coupled with long-term exposure to food, Victor's self-healing factors are not as good as before, and his body continues to age. Not everyone is as lucky as him to be able to awaken new abilities, but looking at Victor's back, Logan had some thoughts in his mind. He thinks it's time to find a way to help Victor and the professor restore the X gene. Logan doesn't want them to stay lonely until they die. However, Logan also understood that it was difficult to find a way to help them recover, so he had to take his time. Thinking about it, Logan also walked into the car and sat next to Victor. "What are you thinking about, looking so sad?" Victor noticed the change in Logan's expression, smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "I'm just old, not dead. Please don't act like you're crying, okay? Let's go back and drink. I was there just now. When I bought the car, I bought 2 bottles of good wine." As he spoke, Victor took out 2 palm-sized bottles of wine from his pocket and shook them. Logan nodded with a wry smile. "Okay, then I'll have a drink with you." After saying that, he sighed, leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Today was really tiring. Although killing was simple, just sweeping with thermal vision, it was not easy to keep the thermal vision running for such a long time. Even after so long, his eyes were still a little sore, and thermal vision consumes a lot of energy. Now he just felt very hungry. This was also inevitable. Although the power of thermal vision was strong, it was not without consumption. Every time it was used, it was a test of physical strength. It would be great if there was an ability to store a large amount of Hengxin energy. Logan couldn't help but mutter in his heart. If he could have such an ability to accumulate energy and use the stored ability in battle, this problem could be avoided to a large extent. However, he also understood that such an ability was only a thought, but it was actually difficult to achieve. As the convoy started to set off, after driving for more than an hour, everyone returned to the farm. It was already night, and the canteen was closed. But fortunately the people in the canteen thoughtfully left them food. Logan and Victor packed up the food and took a few bottles of wine from the canteen to drink at home. After completing this mission, they had nothing to do and could relax for a while, so the two of them didn't care about resting and drank from the evening to the early morning of the next day. Since his self-healing ability was greatly restored, Logan's alcohol tolerance was much better than before. He drank 2 bottles of strong liquor with a concentration of 60 or 70 degrees before he gradually became drunk. On the other side, Victor had already fallen asleep on the sofa with a red face, holding the bottle of wine, and muttered drink. From time to time, looking at Victor's appearance, Logan smiled helplessly, staggered to his feet, helped Victor back to the room, and cleaned up the mess in front of the sofa before returning to the room. He took a comfortable bath and washed away all the blood stains and some broken meat hidden in the hair. At the same time, looking at himself in the mirror, his skin has been restored by the self-healing factor. Even though he was shot by bullets a few hours ago, there is not even a bullet hole on his body now. Although his current self-healing factor is still a little short of the peak state, it is enough for him to fight normally. After washing every detail of his body, Logan lay back on the bed, looking at the night outside the window. He concentrated his mind and the data panel popped up. Endurance, 10, Strength, 10, Agility, 10, Speed, 10, Intelligence, 6, Defense, 10, Willpower, 10, Fighting Skills, 10, Prestige. 651, Special Attributes, none. Special Abilities, Self-Healing Factor. Thermal Vision, Annihilation, Current Physical Condition, Normal Physical Condition, X gene improved. Free points, 12, Enhancement points, 21. Looking at the values on the panel, Logan couldn't help but smile on his tired face. His prestige has now reached 651 points, one step closer to 1,000 points. If his guess is correct, he will be able to awaken another skill after 1,000 points. Logan has been looking forward to that new skill. It's like the pleasure of opening a blind box. He knows there is something inside, but he doesn't know what it is. His new ability is the same now. He knows it will awaken, but he doesn't know what it will awaken. After the excitement, Logan noticed the Special Attributes column. Until now, he has been very familiar with the panel, and the values on the panel have changed over such a long time, but only this special attribute has been blank. Logan doesn't know what this thing represents. He guessed that some special attributes might be awakened later, but Logan is still unclear about what it is. After searching, Logan couldn't figure out the meaning of special attributes. Fortunately, he stopped thinking about it. This kind of thing can't be forced. He can only take it one step at a time. After exhaling, he continued to look down. Logan's eyes continued to move down. Finally, he saw 21 points of enhancement points. A full 21 points, if all added to the self-healing factor, it is enough to restore the self-healing factor to its peak. Although the current self-healing factor is enough to support him in fighting, the recovery speed of the wound is still much slower than before. In the past, it could be restored in the blink of an eye, but now it takes some time, and if all 21 points of enhancement are added to the self-healing factor, I am afraid that my self-healing factor will be stronger than before, and even a broken arm can be restored in a short time. Logan's eyes were burning, and he added all the enhancement points to the self-healing factor without hesitation. In an instant, he could clearly feel the obvious changes in his body. All the fatigue was swept away, and even the slight drunkenness was completely sobered up because of the recovery of the self-healing factor. The muscles on his body tightened quickly and visibly, and his body was radiating endless vitality, as if his whole body was full of strength. Feeling the changes in his body, Logan got out of bed and walked to the mirror. Looking at himself in the mirror, the white hair on his head completely disappeared, leaving only a thick and lush dark hair color. The wrinkles on his face also disappeared as his muscles tightened. He looked more than 10 years younger in an instant. Now, from his appearance, he is only about 30 years old at most. Logan couldn't help but touch his cheek, feeling the youthful vitality in his body, and was a little dazed for a while. A few months ago, he was still an old man who might die of old age at any time, and now, he is completely a young man full of vitality. Logan couldn't hide his excitement, tears welled up in his eyes. This familiar feeling is finally back. He quickly looked at the attributes in the panel. current physical condition, normal physical condition, normal X gene. Recovered, completely recovered, the former Wolverine will also reappear in the light of day,